Good morning, everyone, whoever's on.
Morning.
Morning.
Is being recorded.
Hope you all had a good weekend.
Morena.
I think my husband's having a midlife crisis and he bought a pinball machine. That's what we did on the weekend.
Woohoo.
So if you love pinball, we can have a little bit of a beer on the deck and a pinball go. Are you
Dating the mayor.
Eh?
Dating the mayor.
Yeah. Oh dear. It's my office until the sun goes away. Anyway, nearly there, aren't we? One more minute. You feeling better, Jeff?
Yeah, not a hundy, but a little bit better than yesterday. Thanks, yeah.
Did you have the COVID or did you just a cold?
Oh, I'm just doing tests every day, but it's nothing. It's not COVID yet. No, so it looks okay.
All right, cool.
Thanks.
I think tomorrow's announcement will be pretty interesting for us all, really.
Yeah, it feels like, I don't know, personally it
Feels like time to move forward.
feels like time.
Yeah.
Oh, I think we still have to watch the admissions to hospital and into intensive care rather than the number of reports these days. I think that's the most important figures.
Yeah, I guess we'll have that discussion once we've seen what the nature of the announcement. Anyway, good morning, one and all. We will now get into the meeting, and it's just an adjournment, so we don't really have Muna here to do a karakia, so because we're still in meeting. As you know, we got through quite a lot, but not everything. So today the main plan is to go through the capital deferments, right? Can you want to talk me through the order of things that we're doing today, just to make sure I haven't got that wrong?
Just procedurally before you start.
Yeah.
I guess it's an adjournment as such, but are we still going to do an apologies? Because I've got to slip away for an AGM, and Mark and I are submitting to the Well Energy Trust at 2:40, I think, as well.
Okay. Yeah, we'll note those. Amy? I don't know.
Paula, I just have one as well, sorry.
Okay, cool.
I just said I'll be in and out, but I'll keep in touch with Amy, and I've got to leave between 3:30 and 4.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Okay.
I emailed you one this morning too, Paula, I think, regards to me.
I may not have caught up with that.
That's right. Amy's got.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look, I think we accept with such long days that it's going to be a little bit of in and out, and that'll be caught on the record anyway. So that is what that is. All right. Staff.
Yes.
Which item are we starting? Oh, I can't see anybody. Oh, there you are, Julie.
Yes.
Which item are we starting on today, just so I get our head back in the game?
Marina, everyone, what we'd suggest is we quickly go through the capital program deferrals, and that's resolutions on page 199, resolutions D and E, and that will just tidy up where we'd finished. We'd had questions around those previously the other day, and that just looking at those resolutions would tidy us up. At that point, what we'd like to do is we've prepared a new set of financial graphs for you, so an updated figure to incorporate all the decisions that you've made so far, including just those base capital decisions, but it includes the inflation adjustment that we passed in PX the other day. So if then we could share those graphs and you could see what the new starting point is, and then after that move into covering the projects that are covered, or the proposals that are covered in resolutions F and G. And then we have some stuff at the end, which is really around significance engagement at the end to cover as well, and also a couple of other smaller things.
Okay. All right, so let's get on the right page. What page was that again? Just 210.
Yes, so 210 was where the discussion was in the paper, and the resolutions, you can see them on page 199. So we're just looking at resolutions D and E.
Okay, sorry, I'm just getting to the right page because Diligent is slow on my machine. Okay.
Could you put maybe those resolutions up so everyone could just see those two? Thank you.
So resolutions are on what page? Sorry, Julie.
Page 199.
Thank you. Right. Excellent. So, okay, the ones you need us to, do you want to talk to how they've been tidied up, and then we'll...
Yes, so these are the,
resolutions?
certainly me, Paula, these are the two that we discussed the other day. So the deferral program at this stage is just over 19.62 million. These are the deferrals that we know we're going to move out of next year into a later year. We do expect that number to change as we progress through this year, and we'll bring back another number, a revised number for that number when we come back with our final budget. But those are the ones that have been identified to date. And then the second one is just confirming that total capital budget. Now those are both, you can see the best place to look at this is that table that is on, sorry, I'm just scrolling through my Diligent. That's on page 210. So you'll see the total capital budget of 37745, which is on the top of page 211 at the bottom of that table.
Could I ask a question, please, Mayor
Yeah,
Paula?
yeah, sorry, we'll get, getting to questions.
So,
Trying to
Julie,
get-
of this one, if there are discussions to be had about there's still some projects that we haven't talked about yet, will that affect this number?
It will, but we will pick that up when we do the
Okay.
resolutions right at the end. So as you talk for those proposals, that'll be added to that, and we can update that figure at the end.
So would it just make sense to only do D in the recommendation at this point, or?
We can, and then we can just add the additional projects in.
Yeah. Then we'll have a more accurate view.
Yeah.
Could be wrong, but just a question. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I was thinking that too. So
Okay, so we'll move E to be part of resolution J.
Right.
Yep, hang on a minute. So where I'm trying to scroll, computer's being lumpy. This is the resolution on page 199. Can't see it. I'm still on the electricity costs. Pages must be different.
Yeah, J captures it. Yes.
J.
Yep.
Yeah, J. Okay, hang on. Let me go across the page.
So we'll add that in as a capital. We'll add
The Romans.
another Roman in there, just saying what the total capital program is, with the updated from your final decisions.
Right. Those are the yep. Okay, so J, we're moving just up to J, we're excluding J.
No, all we're moving at the moment is D.
D.
Is D.
Just D.
Okay.
Amy,
Right.
can you put that up?
Yeah, I'm just going back to it. Rob, you got a question while we...
Yeah, I've got a question, Julie. The 19.62 million is the known figure now, is it?
Yes.
And that if I compared it to what we've got this year, the figure's grown to 90.6 million thus far for this year. So that 19 million could in fact be the low end of what might ultimately get deferred if we compare, if next year, the ability to deliver next year is no better than it is this year.
Yes, that's a fair assumption.
Is that a fair comment to make?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, okay. I'm understanding now where that 19 and what it compares to. Thank you.
Okay, well, to get this across, because we had a lot of conversation, and given that Julie's explained that at the end of the project list, we'll come back to the overall budget, because because everything we moved was for the from public excluded will now be in public to discuss. So apart from the confidential, commercially sensitive stuff. So I'll move if I have a seconder.
Yeah, I'll second, Mayor Paula.
Who was that?
Maxine.
Okay, thank you, Maxine. We'll go to, we've had questions. Are all questions expended? If so, we'll go to the debate, and I'm not going to say anything at this point. I don't think I might reserve my right to reply. Maxine, a second. Do you want to say something? Then I'll go to you. And
golly, I guess this is a part of everyday business. We can't always be meeting exactly what we say, and this allows us to be able to adjust our books in order to account for what is possible and what we know is coming. So in order to be able to get semi-accurate figures, it's absolutely necessary to use this type of accounting process to do that. And I'm more than happy to be the seconder. Kia ora.
thank you. Ewan.
Yeah, I hold a diametrically opposed position to my good friend and colleague Maxine. This isn't business as usual. This is a reflection of poor process, and it's a reflection of our desire to rate and charge development contributions on one end and then fail to deliver projects on the other. And I think we simply move one issue onto the next year, while selectively putting our heads in the sand and ignoring the inflationary consequences of delaying these projects. So we've rated, we've charged DCs, we've taken the income, we can't do the work, we defer, then we find that we have to pay more for the work that we said we were going to do, and it's this vicious, unending cycle. And local government has to stop this. So I will not be supporting any deferrals.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Pascoe.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I don't quite agree with Councillor Wilson's approach to this. I don't think we are deferring the capital program as a matter of convenience. I think that we've got enough we've got enough observance over the capital program, and we do this through the Finance Committee meeting to question why particular projects are being delayed. And I think for the most part, what I hear is that there are valid reasons why what we have in our capital program can't necessarily go ahead as we have initially planned for it. I think one of the ways that we've tried to mitigate against getting into each year what that program is running a rolling average over 3 years, so that there will be, if you like, projects. And I see we've got 90 million at the bottom of page 210, 90.6 million that we've had to defer this year. And I think we've had pretty clear information from our staff that the reasons for the delay in those projects has been clearly explained to us. And I think that we have accepted those delays, not as a matter of it being convenient for staff, but because of all of the things that are happening in the economy at the moment. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor O'Leary.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor Paula. Yeah, I just want to comment following on from Councillor Pascoe. I understand Councillor Wilson's frustrations. His messages are ones that I have heard and said myself, as many members have around the table for many, many, many years. But in my view, if we really want to stop deferring projects, we simply have to reduce our capital program of works every year. That's what we actually have to do. And I don't see we certainly can't do that in this annual plan, but we're going to have to look seriously at our next LTP for the new council and those that are around the table. Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Taylor.
Thanks, Mayor Paula. Look, I totally agree with Councillor O'Leary on that issue because, and I remember going back to the last annual plan, I think it was, or it might have been the LTP or annual plan, I think, where I was saying, look, our capital program's huge and we never get through them. And we keep on putting up these big, huge capital programs and saying, look how much we're going to get done, and we never get there. And yet we rate for it, we borrow for it, and then we rate to service it. And I think Ewan has got a point. And I think in this particular, I think there are times where obviously things are deferred for various reasons, but it's become a matter of course because we are too ambitious in what in their capital program. And I think today is a good chance. What worries me most is we're going to defer all these projects and then fill the void with a whole lot more capital projects. So today is a good chance not to fill the void with a whole lot more projects. But yeah, I'm very tempted to support Councillor Wilson, but I do understand that there are. I agree with Rob. I think there are some legitimate reasons for many of these deferrals. Thanks.
Thanks. Councillor McPherson. No, sorry, Dave, you're mute.
Sorry, having a few problems with my machine this morning. Thanks, Bunty, for swapping around behind me. Yeah, good on you. Look, I agree with Rob. I think it's crazy speaking, to be honest, to say you don't support, you're not going to wear any deferrals. You have to look at the reasons why there are deferrals and look at them on a case-by-case basis. But might I, going back a bit further, which addresses Jeff's point and Angela's point, I don't recall putting in major capital programs into the LTP without staff having been asked by someone amongst the elected wing, can we actually do this? Are there enough staff to do this? Have you put in the staff component that allows us to do this? So we rely on our staff management, at least advice on that factor as well. Now, they don't always get it right, but look at the proportion of projects we actually do get through. And the proportion of deferrals is certainly lower than it was some years ago when this issue did become a big issue. So I'm relatively relaxed about this. Of course, no one likes deferrals, but if you just do a blanket, I'm opposed to all deferrals, that's nuts, because that's not taking into account any factors at all, some of which may be in our control, some of which may be underestimates by management or by us. But to actually say you're not going to accept any is not on, in my opinion.
Councillor Bunting.
Thank you, and thank you, Dave, for going ahead of me. Hey, I will be supporting it, but I echo the points and have a lot of sympathy for Councillor Wilson. I don't think there's many of us around the table who haven't expressed frustration at deferrals. I've asked very naive questions about it. It just doesn't seem right to rate people and then not perform the work and then do it later when it costs more. That's a really simple principle that most other businesses perhaps wouldn't get away with. What is of concern to me is the amount of stuff we are looking at approving, and staff will say yes, and they do want to do it. Then they find they can't, so it goes out to consultants and costs us even more. And what I'm casting my eye over the next little while is how much money goes into the building and doesn't come out of the building. How much we're spending on plans that we actually have to get someone else to write for us that we probably can't execute anyway. So I'm just sort of giving a bit of warning. That's the lens I'm looking at over this. But yeah, sadly, I think we can't. We can't obviously blanket vote down deferrals, but I think you make a good point, Councillor Wilson. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. I'll be supporting this, and obviously we need to be very mindful when we're looking at when we're looking at our capital programs, what we can actually deliver. But we also have to look at, like Dave said, this in a bigger sense, and how much we actually do deliver versus how much is deferred. And we've heard from staff, for example, some things aren't in our control, like the timing of what developers do and when we need to align with their work. So there are always going to be some deferrals in situations like that. There's also really complex projects a lot of the time. So there are always going to be things that, you know, aren't necessarily expected or take longer than we had anticipated. And sometimes that does mean that we can bring forward other things which are ready to go. And so in terms of that inflationary impact, you know, it's kind of neutralized. So I think that it's unrealistic to actually go, let's just not accept any deferrals, because that we have such a big and complex program of capital works. We do need some flexibility built into it to be able to push and pull projects. Otherwise, we'll end up being hamstrung. So, you know, we need to be mindful, but I support this motion. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Donovan.
Yeah, ditto to all of the above. I was thinking along the same lines. I mean, you could throw any number of cliches at this. I won't bore you with some of those, but because I've heard too many of them over my time. But yeah, I'll be supporting the motion as well.
Thank you. Any more debate? No, I'll exercise a right of reply in this and just say I 100% agree that deferrals must be carefully managed. I also agree that we need to set a realistic capital program as far as possible, and not, as other colleagues have said, lean on the flexibility of the ratepayer to do that. We do need to be as accurate in our forecasting as we can. Having said that, at the moment there are some legitimate reasons for delays, especially in capital projects. The construction materials are delayed through delayed freight. Labour is short, materials are short in general, and yeah, and that's really slowing down a lot of capital projects up and down the country. But I also agree, I absolutely agree with Ewan that inflation is a critical issue. And in our debate last week, we agreed, there was a lot of nuance in there, but we agreed to keep open to changes and adjustments in any inflation, in our inflation figures, our final inflation figures, right up to the time where we formally adopt the annual plan. At the moment, we're just informing a draft annual plan, and of course, then we'll have to adopt a final annual plan. And we have asked, and I think it was useful, in fact, Ewan gave some very good examples of other indices. So we've asked for, besides Bill, so we've asked for additional indices and examples of inflation. And it's good that we have April, May to kind of sort that out a wee bit. And, you know, I myself will be looking closer on what we learn from New Zealand's best economists. So, you know, I haven't closed my mind to further adjustments to the inflation mark. I think it's probably important in this next couple of months of uncertainty for us to keep probing into what's right there. I also don't really like deferring, because it means that we don't get the outcomes that we want to get. I don't think we put projects in deliberately so we can defer them and create flexibility. I think we put projects in because we really want to deliver those projects on cost and on time, but best laid plans of mice and men, as they say. So it doesn't always work out that way. Anyway, good debate, everyone. We will go to the vote with the little hands. All in favour with the green tick and opposed with the red cross, please.
The motion is carried, noting that Councillor Wilson is dissenting.
Thank you very much. Thank you, councillors. Julie, next item is just...
Thank you, Mayor Paula. What we thought would be useful is if we show you the new position where we've ended up with in terms of our financial graphs, just the debt to revenue graph and balancing the books graph. Amy, can you pop those up? Just the base one, a revised base to start with.
Just procedurally, is this the one we got emailed through to us?
Yes, it is. Great. Thank you. And just scroll down a bit. So the main impact, as you can see from the decisions that have been made so far, is I'm going to get Tracy to talk to these. Actually, Tracy, do you want to talk?
Thanks, Julie. Good morning, everyone. And yes, Councillor, disappeared. Councillor Wilson, these are the graphs that we just emailed you out this morning. So you would have received 2 graphs from us. So the first one is just the revised base. So if you think about where we are in the agenda and the recommendations right now, this is basically a picture of that. So all of the decisions that you've made up to this point in time. So what you're looking at, is a debt to revenue of 267 and then a balance in the books of the $13 million. So that's as at now. So the next graph is including all of the proposals as well. So if you want to switch to the next one, please, Amy.
Tracy.
So again, this is what you're about
Tracy.
to go through, all of the proposals.
Tracy, just hold on a second. Some people are messaging me in the background that they're still finding it hard to hear you. I know this is really frustrating, but if you can put the mouthpiece right by you, that would be really awesome. Jeff, have you got a question on that, or you want to wait for Tracy to finish?
Oh, no, yeah, sorry, not on that, Paula, yeah.
Okay, we'll wait. So carry on, Tracy, but just, you kind of have to kind of really project like an actor.
Thanks. So the second one is just basically what this includes all your proposals that you're about to go through for the rest of today. So again, just showing you where the debt to revenue ratio is going to be and the balance in the books, which ends up at 14 million. So that was all I had.
Thank you. Thank you. We do have some questions. If you can remove that screen, that would be good. Thanks. Thank you. Deputy Mayor Taylor.
Thanks, Paula. So as it stands, Tracy, we're pushing the balance in the books out by an extra year?
Yes, we are.
24 to 25?
Yes, that's correct.
Thanks. Which
is not too different from where we ended in the discussion last week, is that really?
No, that's right.
Okay, councillors.
I was going to say, Mayor Paul, if no one else has any questions, now would move on to the resolutions that are in section 8F of the resolutions on page 119, and then the discussions for those. There's a table covering each of those resolutions that we could work through.
Yeah, I'm just trying to find that. Oh, here we go. Thank you. Little f. I was looking at a big F there for a minute and getting confused. There's quite a lot of complicated numbering in this. Just to
yes.
Be fair.
So
okay.
215 in diligent is where we start talking, providing the detail of each of those proposals.
Okay. Okay. So there are the in F. Note the following proposals. We will now. You think we should go through each one of them? Or shall we do it by exception? Councillors, any strong view on that?
Each one, your worship, each one. Please.
All right then. Okay, so let's look at F1, which is our negotiation for the University of Waikato pool, right, Julie? Am I in the right place?
Yes, that's correct.
So,
what page are you on?
199 on page 199 in diligent.
Yeah, got that.
Which is 199 is where the resolution is, and then page 215 is the table that provides the detail around this resolution.
So, sorry, I was just going to ask you a question there about the clarity of that one. That is just discussion with no cost impact for this next financial year. Is that right?
Yes, correct. Out of the workshop session we had, Rebecca, jump in, I see you there. Staff had taken the feedback that elected members provided and re-looked at this. Rebecca, did you want to briefly talk to this?
Yes, so thank you, Julie. Good morning, councillors. So Julie's correct. Post the feedback from the workshop, we met with the university team again. And what we identified is that there's quite a bit more work to be done to understand the proposal for council in this. So what we're suggesting today is that we have approval to enter into negotiations, which would open the door to get some of the information that may be sensitive, so more detailed condition assessments, operating information and things like that, so that we can bring back a more fulsome proposal to council in time for next year's annual plan.
So just further to that, then wouldn't it just be easy just to take it off the book? Because there's not really much point in having it in there at this point. And you can, Lance, do you need the annual plan's guidance to go into those negotiations, or?
I think we just want a resolution that there's an intent that we can go ahead and do that, because if there's no interest from elected members, then we won't waste staff time.
Oh, okay.
So it's just a bit of a tidy up. I know it seems a bit administrative and that sort of thing, but it'd be appreciated if you guys could give an indication either way, and then we can either negotiate or not.
Okay. Okay, I'm relaxed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? Oh, Councillor O'Leary.
Yeah, thanks for that. Look, I'm happy to for this to be a formal direction to staff. I was the one that raised about the us actually finding out about the condition of the pool, Rebecca. So who will do that detailed condition assessment? Will that be us and our cost, or will we be expecting them to do that?
We've had preliminary discussions with the university around that, and I believe that they are happy to share the cost of the condition assessment. However, there may be other elements of the proposal being developed that would be HCC cost, but we will fund that through our existing operational budget.
Okay, so how do we fund something like that through an existing budget?
So through the aquatics budget, we have some money for consultancy fees, legal fees and things like that. So drafting of the MOU, perhaps we would fund through our existing pools aquatics budget.
Okay, all right. But as this will come back at some point anyway, you will also report on what those costs were or will be.
Correct. Great.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Paula. You're on mute, Paula.
Actually, I was on mute while I was telling you you're on mute.
Look, Paula, I'll go ahead anyway, because I can see I'm next on the list, Dave, here. This is a self-chairing meeting, guys. We can do it.
Sorry, Amy, you just unmute me if I'm not mute.
It's like the traffic lights going out, isn't it?
Paula, it's all right. We've got it in hand. You go back.
Oh, no, you guys are great. You were great yesterday. Thanks, Dave. Go.
Hey, I'm possibly going to do a Ewan here and ask really why it is needed to be here. Because, and also to why it would be Rebecca be coming back to the next annual plan rather than to the next LTP, where sort of potential major works would be, unless they're urgent, are best placed. So can you give a bit of a commentary? I know it was sort of asked before, but really, can't this be done anyway? We're always looking at projects and future capital possibilities without having to change the LTP.
Yeah, sure. I think Lance covered off really well the reason why we were seeking approval. It just formalises the approach to the university, which is informal and at a staff level at present. The reason why we're hoping to do this work is that the university have signalled that they would like to exit their partner pool agreement with council, which could create a gap in the aquatic provision in the city. And when we completed the SGL report last year with Steve Bramley, the university pool was identified as quite a strategic partner for us in that quadrant of the city, enabling public access. So we could undertake this work and bring any major capital requirements, understanding that those would not be considered until the long-term plan was developed. However, we wanted to get the ball rolling and complete the work to minimise the risk of losing that provision in that part of the city.
So it's not essential that it comes to the annual plan next year. It could be the following year's LTP. Are you by hearing that right?
I think what I'm saying is that we would expect that any capital requirements, significant capital requirements that were identified through the discussions with the university would be presented to the long-term plan. Whether or not we wanted to enter into an operational agreement with the university for the 12-month, the next annual plan prior to that, we would find out more detail of that through further conversations with the university.
Dave, we could add in at the end if you like.
I do remember Councillor Wilson's celebrated comments about a certain Hamilton East MP getting out of that pool. A photograph of her some years ago, Ewan. Thank you.
I don't know anything about that, but that would be a lovely tea room chat one day, I'm sure.
Indicative of a very good relationship Ewan had with the MP in question.
Okay. But yeah, that also sounds like a nice conversation for another time. Ewan.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor Paula. I guess I've heard, and when I read the resolution, we are authorising formal negotiations. I've heard the words MOU. In my years as a chief executive, I don't think I've ever gone into formal negotiations and spoken about MOU without having a understanding as potentially the quantums involved. And so Lance, can you tell me what quantums you're thinking that we may have to fund here?
Councillor Ewan, you talking about for the investigatory work that other councillors were talking about, and or the the capital sums for upgrade and that sort of thing? Are you talking about both?
Both, but I guess what you're signalling is a desire to potentially take over this asset, and I'm just trying to understand the financial magnitude of that before I sort of sign off on giving you the right to start the negotiation.
I'll get Rebecca to talk about the detail, Councillor Ewan.
Yeah, so sorry, Councillor Ewan, I think probably I can help to clarify. I think the language around this is not as accurate as it could be. So I think what we're seeking is approval to investigate the proposal in more detail. And so we wouldn't be proposing that we enter into any agreements until those full costings are brought back to Council for consideration. In terms of the annual cost of the operating cost of the proposal, which is known to us, that's $50,000 per year on top of our aquatics budgets.
Cool. So Rebecca, are you saying that the university will gift us this asset and we'll just have to take over the maintenance and the OPEX?
I think that's what this next phase of investigatory works, sorry, tripping over my words there, would look into. So the specific nature of the agreement, the condition of the pool and plant, and any other requirements would be brought back to Council for consideration before any decision was made. I think we're just seeking approval to undertake that work with the university.
How could we tighten up the resolution in F that clearly says that Council isn't committing to any financial or capital purchase in this matter?
Perhaps we could signal that we would investigate a proposal for the Council to take over the operation of the pool, and that would be brought back to Council for further consideration rather than an MOU.
I'll probably tighten it up, Councillor Ewan, by just saying staff will carry out further investigations and cut out those other words in between into the condition long-term viability of the University of Waikato pool and prepare a proposal for consideration. So it's just working through the options and then bringing a proposal forward. And one of the options may be to do nothing because it's too expensive and not worth its while.
I'd be much more comfortable with that change in wording. Thank you.
Councillor Ewan, we'll just draft that changed resolution for you, and if you'd like to put that up as a motion?
Be great, thanks. Well, I mean, it may not. Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
if
it may not be
somebody else is
required.
going to,
Yeah, it may be something that we all accept as an expedient way forward. So we can just see the words. Councillor Pascoe?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor Paula. Look, depending on the wording, I'm keen to support that. I think we need to put some sort of limit on both staff time and investigation costs, so that we don't end up over the next 12 months spending $500,000 and then deciding that it will go no further, even if it's coming out of existing budgets. So I know it will be very hard, Rebecca, to put a figure in there, but I would like to think that staff would be able to move from the table reasonably quickly if the discussion was going nowhere. It's a 60-year-old pool. I don't know what condition it's in now, but there could be significant spending to bring it up to the standard that might be required for both us and or the university. So my question is, are you comfortable that you will be able to remove ourselves from the discussion if it looks like it's going somewhere where we think it might be cost prohibitive for council to continue, both in the investigation process and subsequent?
Yes, I believe so.
I'm happy to support Councillor Ewan, depending on how the wording comes up. Thanks.
Thank you. Well, Councillor Donovan, I'll take your question, then I have one. Thanks.
Thanks, Paula. Sorry, caught me unaware. I was getting ready for my position in the queue. But Rebecca, is there an opportunity to, and hopefully I haven't misread anything, but would there be an opportunity to claim any kind of rebate if we did decide to go ahead with the pool?
I think that forms part of the proposal, Councillor Donovan. So we're aware that there would be some revenue that would come in through the agreement. And there was a discussion in the earlier Q&A around student fees and other things, which I think that we would cover off in our investigation with the university.
Yeah, I think my question's more like if we paid for the investigation into the pool, could that be rebated to us through? Oh, maybe I've misheard what you said. Maybe you did answer it. Am I making sense? Maybe I've still got COVID fatigue.
I think the cost would be shared with the university. So we would identify which costs. We've talked about asset condition assessments and plant condition assessments, which are their cost. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Thank you, Mark. Justin, mine's a bit more of a broader question. In terms of the pool and the bigger piece of work that we were doing with the University of Waikato around a shared recreation centre. Now, I understand that they have put, because they're building their power site on university at the moment, because the international students aren't back, they've put the refurbishment of their their community sports centre on hold. And the two parts, and why I'm mentioning this is because the two parts, the entranceway to the swimming pool and the entranceway to the sports centre, were going to be designed to be to join, so that they could be done in phases. So where does that conversation happen? We've had that conversation with Waikato District Council, the future of councils as well, in terms of their partnership. How does this bit of work fit? Is this just purely about the pool, and have they dropped the bigger goal, or where are we at with that?
That's a good question, Mayor Paula. I'm not currently over the wider proposal. When we spoke to them, this was very much about the pool at this time in our existing partner pool agreement and continued provision. Lance may have more information on the wider proposal.
Well, I think you've actually answered the question yourself, Mayor Paula, that they have put it on hold for financial reasons. It's still in their scheme of things in the more medium term. And we probably have some other more live options around an indoor recreation centre in the south end of the city that we can investigate further. So we're carrying on that conversation, but the first opportunity is the pool. The indoor recreation centre is probably more of a medium to longer term aspiration and potential partnership with the university. So it's not off the table, but it's been kicked down the road a bit. So
in any memorandum of understanding, we could reflect that wider body of work, because I'm afraid that we might just invest in the pool and then the rest of the conversation never gets revisited or had, or, you know, because it was such a big, bold concept.
Yeah, I think that's something that we can discuss around the, you know, the general discussions we have with the university on a number of matters.
Yeah, because what I don't want from the outcome is a slightly tarted up pool that we are responsible for. I want a really excellent swimming facility for the university and the wider community of Hillcrest and Peacock at the end of it.
Yeah, you know, but to be realistic, when you're retrofitting something that is reasonably old, there will be limitations to what you can do without spending, you know, tens of millions. So
no, I get that, but yeah, we retrofit our own pool, remember, Waterworld, and we did a fantastic job. So I'm sort of seeking that kind of quality of outcome, not necessarily an Olympic or competition pool, but a really good quality of outcome. That's
absolutely.
So that can be picked up in the MOU.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you. That answers my questions. So Julie, do we want to move these one by one?
That might be up to you. I mean, it's up to you in terms of whether you want to have the debate separately for each one.
Yeah, I do want to have the debate separately. My concern is that at the end of the time, we've spent this much money, that the last one on the list becomes the poor relation in terms of discussion and will of council. That's my only concern. But I think that we are probably best to take them one at a time.
And we will preface each of the resolutions with the purposes of preparing the draft budget. So you're not locking yourself in again until we get right to the end when you can see the impact of everything.
Okay. All right. Happy with that then. Can we go back? Can we get the resolution up with Ewan's amended words and so on? That is the start. That's the one that's sort of currently there, isn't it? No.
That is the revised one.
That's the revised one. It takes out the formal words of negotiations.
Excuse me though, Mayor Paula, it doesn't qualify who we're having the further discussion with regard to the pool. It doesn't mention the university.
Needs to say the University of Waikato pool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well spotted, Maxine. Do you want to move it, Ewan? I'm happy to second it. I think you had it on second.
Councillor Rob has seconded it, and I'm happy to move it.
Brilliant. All right. Any further questions, everyone? If not, let's go into the debate. Any debate, Ewan?
No debate from me.
Any debate, anyone? There being none, let's go to the tick box or cross box. All in favour, tick. Huh?
The motion is carried unanimously.
Thank you. That brings us on to F Roman numerals 2, which is the welcoming plan for a more inclusive city. Does anyone want to introduce this?
The details are on page 216, Diligent.
Okay. Now, Kesh, I know you've had a lot to do with it, so I'd like to give you just a few moments to not debate it, but to explain what the intent of this is, if you like. Can
Thanks,
we pop this
Mayor.
across- Can we pop all the text in, Amy? Thanks. Go, Cash.
This is a request to set up a fund to implement the welcoming plan, which has been endorsed by the community committee a few weeks ago. It puts aside funds to allow the advisory panel and the community committee to come up with the criteria and guidelines as the next step. Is that enough information for now?
Yep, I think so. Right, let's get into some questions. Councillor O'Leary.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor Paula. Just so I'm on page 216. I think during the workshop, I think this is a nice idea, and I'm probably going to support it. But I just had raised some concern that this is just it's a brand new contestable fund. So it kind of jumps, well, it does jump the gun for the other was it the 3-year contestable fund and the other bigger fund that everyone from the community has to scramble and fight over each other to get some money. So can staff just explain why? And actually, I don't think in the paper you actually say the words contestable fund. So A, why was it set up in advance of all of the others? And B, is it a contestable fund? And when will council see some criteria around that? Hi, Andy.
Got it, councillors. I guess taking the feedback from the workshop, it was really around how do we support our communities to help us in partnership to see the welcoming plan come to fruition. So not strictly a grant, but how do we, as an advisory panel, how do they work with community groups to really achieve the outcomes that we have outlined in the plan. I guess from answering your question of why does it jump, the 25,000 contribution from Immigration New Zealand is there to be used in partnership with some of our funding for this to happen. That 25,000 doesn't exist for any other purpose other than enacting the welcoming plan. So without our contribution, that 25,000 doesn't sit there. So we've kind of used it as a way of how do we get some greater community outcomes.
Okay, so and the 75 that's being proposed, the 25 is on top of that, taking the fund to 100.
That's correct.
Yeah, okay. And just last question then, Andy. So will, I'm assuming the community committee, will we get more detail on how the process of how we will,
yes,
yes, give the money out?
So if council is supportive of this being set up, then the staff will work with the advisory panel on those criteria and guidelines and then bring them back to the community committee.
Okay, so we'll still have a look at that and decisions around that. Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you. That's my questions.
Thank you, Councillor O'Leary. Deputy Mayor Taylor.
Thanks, Mayor Paula. Just a question of, we've got 75,000 there. Is that a definite? Is there a reason for that sum, or is there any reason why we couldn't put in 25,000 and just match the funding from the immigration?
The 75 is it's a part of the conversation. I think if we could go lower, just aware that translation of resources as an example for us to translate our welcoming plan, it will cost about $21,000 into the 10 primary languages that are useful. So when we talk translation, there can be costs there. So that's part of the rationale of 100,000 will allow several initiatives to take place.
Okay, thanks, Andy.
Thank you. Councillor McPherson.
Thanks. Just a query again. Is it supposed to be contestable or not? the fund once created, Andy, and regardless of its size, I guess. Yeah.
The idea is that it's not just held there for friends of the plan, but the intent is that the advisory panel is able to work with particular organisations. So there is an element of contestability, most likely, and I caveat that the criterion guidelines still need to be worked through and agreed. But the intent really is that this fund will assist us in achieving the outcomes without us having to do all of the work and all of the thought, but it's allowing our organisations to do it.
So the delivery will include other groups, we hope, we expect.
Yeah, absolutely.
Decision making about where the money goes might be more of a shoulder tapping variety, or certainly include an element of that, so that we can guide what the outcomes more closely to what we're after.
Yeah, the welcoming plan is really clear on the outcomes we want to achieve and has identified a lot of actions. And so the proposal here is that this helps our community partners do some of the stuff that's been agreed by the advisory panel and council. So yes.
It would not be good for our kaupapa to have different ethnic communities competing with each other for a relatively small amount of funding, would it?
No, and this started, I guess, as a potential ethnic fund, and we've realised in the development of the welcome plan that it's bigger than that. We're not just talking about ethnic capability, but we're talking about how do we create a more inclusive community. So it is definitely not going to be a dog-eat-dog scenario that we're trying to create.
Thanks.
Councillor Wilson?
Yes, I'm tiptoeing on this issue because I'm very scared of offending my good friend Councillor Cash. So I'm going to tread with a great deal of care. I've had quite a lot of experience with the Red Cross work and the Resource Migrant Centre work, particularly in things that they do in regards to welcoming packs that have been translated. And I note that both those entities receive some assistance from central government. Can you please assure me and help me understand how we're not, those organisations are not, I don't want to use the word double dipping because that's unfair, but are potentially gaining resources from multiple areas on this?
One of the fundamental elements of the criterion guidelines will be that this is supporting expanded or new initiatives, not business as usual or not things that are already in place. So that double dipping element won't be acceptable, I guess, to the criteria of what goes on here, because it is about how do we promote more and bigger and better rather than keep doing what we're doing.
So Andy, so you're saying that those welcoming packs don't currently exist and they don't currently exist in translated form?
So in terms of the example you've used, if there are things that are already in place and there's programs, initiatives, mechanisms that are having success, they won't fit with this particular implementation of the welcoming plan. The implementation of the welcoming plan will be how do we achieve our outcomes with new and expanded programs, ideas, initiatives, events. And again, part of the work of the advisory group will be to hone in so that there's real clarity between them and council exactly how the money will support our community partners.
Okay, thank you. One last question, but I'm reading between the lines and I think I'm hearing that one of these initiatives will be the development and I think they've already been developed, but the translation and reprinting in 10 languages of the welcoming pack. And if that's the case, I think you said at $21,000?
No, so as part of our agreement with Immigration New Zealand, they've given us essentially $160,000 to help us develop and implement our welcoming plan. of which, separate from this, I've made a proposal to them to help us fund our welcoming plan into 10 different languages. So that's a conversation we're having with central government to use that money, which is $21,000 to get those 10 copies. So that's separate. Yeah.
Andy, look, I'm getting even more confused. So now I had optics on the 25,000. You're now saying that's in addition to the 160,000.
Sorry, a slightly complicated funding agreement we have with Immigration New Zealand is that we have 160,000 from them to do the plan and initiatives, but we can't spend any of that without doing a funding proposal to them around the specific ideas. So we've got in our budget lines money to do this. We have applied for this $25,000 from them, which they've accepted. And we've also put in an application for another $21,000 for translation of the plan, which is part of that 160. So it's just a bit of a complicated funding mechanism that they've got in place.
Okay, all right. I think I'm getting a little clarity in a sea of mud. So what you're saying is 160, but we've got to spend some money to get that 160. And then on top of that, we've asked for an additional, I think you've now say 21,000, and we've got to inject 75.
Apologies, councillors, for creating any confusion here. My reference to the translation was that it's an expensive process if we want to translate resources, and therefore the suggestion of 100,000 was to enable our community groups where translation was needed, that they would have the resources to do that. From a background of the welcoming plans, I can give a fuller report outside of, appreciate your time and your energy into this space, but I can give a fuller report of the next community committee around how that funding relationship works if that is desired.
Mayor Paula, I'm sorry to keep asking this question, but Andy, with all due respect, I'm being asked to make a decision now on the 75,000. I desperately want to do this, but I'm confused about the figures. Could you, one more time, could you walk through the exact figures?
So our funding agreement with Immigration New Zealand has given $160,000 to spend over the next 3 years. Of that 160,000, we've put forward a funding proposal that we use 25,000 of that to go towards the implementation of the 2022 welcoming plan in the proposal that you see in your papers. And that needs to be matched by council contribution for Immigration New Zealand to sign off that $25,000.
Okay, thank you. And just for final clarity, and when you say match, you mean match the 25?
As a minimum, it needs to be matched of 25, correct.
So if we do that, then we're talking 185,000 in the pot, but you're recommending we throw in the 75 for a total of 235,000.
If I don't want to confuse this fully with the money that is coming through our funding agreement, but for this proposal, yes, we've suggested 75,000 to enable the plan to have really good traction in this first year with our community partners. Yes.
Thank you.
Councillor Cash.
Yeah, I was just going to move the original motion, but I just saw a message pop up.
Okay, we'll put you and I notice on the chat that there's an amendment too, so we'll catch up on that when Deputy Mayor speaks. But at the moment, we're still in questions, so I'll hold you for a mover. All right, thanks, Cash. Councillor Pascoe.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor Paula, and thanks, Andy. I think I'm getting the hang of the funding part. The 160,000, which has been offered by Immigration New Zealand, we're taking 25 of that out to match the 75 to give us the 100,000. And it's ongoing. So what happens in years 2 onwards? Not this year we're budgeting for, but the following years if it's ongoing. Does it drop back to 75, or does Immigration New Zealand continue their contribution of 25?
The conversation that we've had with Immigration New Zealand is we'd be confident that 25 sits year 2, so year 1 and year 2, and then that will be the end of our funding agreement through Immigration New Zealand. The conversations in a wider scale is that with the Ministry of Ethnic Communities, there will be some scope to develop this work here. So I can't speak into year, the end of the 10-year plan in terms of that, but our conversation with Immigration New Zealand is 25 this year, 25 next year, and so for our first 2 years.
Okay, so if the funding dried up after 2 years, the 25,000, we would then be limited to 75 in terms of our ongoing contribution to the welcoming program.
That is correct. It is about the implementation of the plan. So council would see a new plan before that point, and so the actions could be altered to represent council's will at that time.
If it was ongoing though at 75, what could we deliver for 75,000? And I appreciate the word implementation is in there. So at some point, one would expect that the amount of work required would slowly reduce. Would we be able to deliver a program at 75,000 ongoing?
If councillors remember the welcoming plan report to the community committee, there's a number of actions in there which are picked up by different parts of council, and so that if 75 was the only element of staff time, then it would be very challenging to implement a plan. But because we've got like Jovi's work, that sits on top of the work that governance is doing around our elections, that kind of sits as part of the business. And so 75 to implement the plan is just with our community partners, not with council's staff and resources.
And one last question, given that immigration is largely driven by central government, and I know that the politicians do try to take as much capital out of changing their immigration policy, should not Immigration New Zealand be contributing more at a local level to help us with the not only welcoming but also the ongoing work once immigrants are settled in Hamilton?
I know that there are ongoing conversations centrally. Red Cross, who leads lots of our refugee resettlement work, are talking exactly along those lines. How does central government support local government to make a better resettlement for refugees? Those policy decisions, obviously are outside of our scope, but there is definitely those central government conversations occurring.
And could the elected wing help with that from Hamilton's perspective?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. I have a question, Andy, just in terms of how this connects with our other funding streams, because I understand the welcoming plan. I think that's a really good initiative for a sector of our community that needs some support to get to really thrive. Now, the ethnic communities and anyone else can apply for the other funding buckets that we do have, the single year grants and even presumably the multi-year grant. But one of the issues is before when I was in Mark and Kesh's shoes, I guess, was the quality of the application to the, it's just getting to help people to land a really good application. So what will this do differently? Because we're sort of taking a piece and putting it separately now. The funding is always over and contested, as you know. It's hugely over contested. So what does that do to our other funding streams, and what's the difference? So I'm quite clear.
So the work that our team, Gary, Sandra, and the wider community advisors do around building the capacity of our organisations will continue, and that work from a community assistance grant process will continue to upskill. I know that Community Waikato and Hamilton Multicultural Services Trust and lots of other great organisations are working in that capacity space so that organisations can put their best foot forward. And I think we see the result of that in all of our grants program. So that kind of aside, I'm pretty confident that that's a growing thing. In terms of this particular thing, it really is around that implementation of the Welcoming Plan, particularly the idea of how do we have connected and inclusive communities and achieve the sub-outcomes that are in the plan. So it will be a little bit more of that conversation, but the advisory panel, who's made up of really great community members, they want to be a part of this process, and they want to keep moving forward in terms of seeing how we as a city get more and more inclusive. So that's where there's a slight difference. It's not just a council staff capacity for our grants. This really is an advisory panel desire to be a part of the process and the implementation.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Wilson, one more question?
Yeah, Mayor Paul, I'm sorry. It's
right.
one to finance. Because we aren't able to balance the books currently, I guess any spending here, we're borrowing money to do this, right?
Yes, that's right. Yep.
So we're going to borrow from the money, from a bank to be able to fund this project. All right, thank you.
Okay, so we have a number. We've got the recommendation. We've got an amendment from Deputy Mayor Taylor, and we've also got an idea that I see percolating from Councillor Pascoe. So that's so Cash, you've moved the staff recommendation, yes? Jeff, can we see, have you got the recommendation from Jeff, Amy? That he sent through chat, I think.
Yes.
Okay, thanks. And Rob, how does this sit with yours? Do you want to foreshadow?
Yeah, my one would be supporting Deputy Mayor Taylor's amendment, but I would like to see the 25,000 in this annual plan being limited to 2 years. That is 2023 and 24. But I'm not sure whether Deputy Mayor Taylor supports that.
Yes, I do.
Okay, that's good. That tidies it up. And so, would you like to second that one then, Rob?
Or I think Councillor Ryan was an earlier seconder.
Okay. Councillor Naidu-Rofe, you have a seconder. Councillor O'Leary, hand up.
Just a question of the amendment.
Cool. Question?
Yeah. Is the 2 years, inclusion of the 2 years, an intention to line it up with the next LTP? Is that the reasoning for that?
No, not really. It was because the funding from Immigration New Zealand was still subject to ongoing negotiation. And I thought putting it, well, it does. It does
align anyway.
Yeah, it does align anyway. That wasn't my intention, but that it probably has fallen that way as a result. But 146,000, as I understand, from Central, was it 160,000 there's a kind of a 2 or 3 year period on that. So that I hope might create some tension on central government to maybe do something a little more permanently in terms of subsidy.
Thanks, Rob. Mayor Paula, may I just very quickly respond to Councillor O'Leary?
Yep.
I do think it would dovetail with the LTP. It was Rob's idea, not mine. But to me, that's kind of where we should be taking a lot of these decisions anyway. So that sort of fits neatly with me.
Yeah, thank you. And just subsequent question to staff. We are changing the annual plan supposedly with non-significant changes. Is it normal practice for us to include a tweak to that, or a proposal or a change, amendment, whatever, and then extrapolate that through the remaining 10 years of the LTP?
Councillor O'Leary, yes. What we do that because what it allows you to see is the long-term impact of your decision on our financial strategy. So Tracy and her team always show you the 10 years, and that allows us to make sure we don't breach that debt headroom limit that we have in particular.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Good point, good question. All right, thank you. We have a mover. Can you put the recommendations up again, please, Amy? Thank you. Kesh, do you have a seconder? Is there a second? Councillor McPherson seconds. I was going to say it's a shame that Marcus had to step out because I believe he was going to second you. Okay, so we will go into the debate. We will take the debate together. I will go with the mover on the motion first, who of course is Kesh, who has a right of reply, and then Deputy Mayor Taylor. And then we will talk to both and vote on each separately. Well, we'd vote on the amendment first, of course, and then if that's lost, we go to the motion. So Kesh, over to you.
Thank you. First, I just want to say thank you to Andy and team for bringing this to us. It has been a long exercise to get to this point. And it's not just this term that this work had started. I'm sure Councillor Gallagher will tell us the long history behind the work that's gone on in the community to get to this point. These are sectors of our community who have been waiting a very, very long time for council to show support in creating a more welcoming environment. Like Andy said, the plan itself has 8 outcomes. This proposal focuses on the outcome number 4, which is to promote connected and inclusive communities. The aim is really to involve and include everyone. So it's not just ethnic communities or refugees, but to have non-ethnic people attend ethnic events and vice versa, to create, we use the word welcoming, but it is to create an inclusive environment for where everyone and anyone feels comfortable attending everything. Yes, it is. The proposal is for for ongoing funding, but in an ideal world, we'd get to a point where this fund wouldn't need to exist because we'd have already reached a point where people feel welcomed anyway. So there'd be no purpose for this fund. So that is the end goal. But for right now, we've got refugees turning up from war-torn countries. We've got immigrants coming in who are very unsettled, especially with the borders being closed for God knows how long. So people are very unsettled. I see this proposal as being something to stimulate that connectedness and that welcoming feeling for Hamilton back again. Like the proposal says, it's not limited to just cultural groups. It's actually your neighborhoods, your streets, your Northeast Community Hub, who can put together programs to help achieve the welcoming plan. I'm not sure how much time I have left.
Not much more. Not much
time
more.
I'll leave it there, and I'll finish off later. Thank you, Mayor Paula.
Thank you, Amy. Just need to keep an eye on the time. Unfortunately, we haven't got Bunty's funny timer. Councillor Ryan.
I thought the seconder was next.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, sorry, apologies. Yeah, absolutely. Just went to the little yellow hand. Sorry, Deputy Mayor Taylor.
Thanks, Mayor Paula, and thanks, Kesh, for introducing it. And look, I've agonised about this because the value of migrants is dear to my heart, and I applaud your leadership here. That we've got so many wonderful cultures in the city, but we're not getting the best out of them. We're not getting everything that they can offer us and bring us in terms of their diversity and their skills. And of course, the Ukrainian thing's top of mind as well, So, but this to me is just a cut our cloth decision. We're also experiencing a cost of living crisis out there. And I feel we need to be careful with discretionary spending today. So I see this as a way of working with Immigration New Zealand and matching them to a degree, but not just such a big commitment. I don't regard the annual plan as a time where we should be approving a list of discretionary spending just because we can. A lot of these decisions today, I think, should be LTP conversations. I desperately didn't want to oppose this outright today because I knew how important it is to you and it's important to me. So this is a compromise, and I hope you won't be too offended. So that's it from me, folks.
Thank you. Councillor Hamilton.
I don't know why I said that, but yeah, thanks.
Thanks, Chair. Look, in the spirit of compromise, I guess I'll sort of follow on. Totally respect the work here Kesh has done and led. I referred a South African family to Jovi and the Welcoming Communities sort of brandly minted package only the other day, and so I think it's a great initiative. I do think we just need to test and measure a little bit though. Let's give it some support and kick it off. But we're talking about $50,000 over 2 years versus $750,000 over 10 years. Nearly $1 million with something that's brand new. So all I'm suggesting today is let's give it some support, a little bit of caution, and let's review it in 2 years' time, which I think is prudent. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Hamilton. Councillor McPherson.
Yeah, look, I'm interested in in Councillor Ryan's caution. I'll put some inverted commas around that. That caution in my time on council has seen the number of different ethnicities in the city grow from 80 to 160. It's doubled in that time. And I dare say the number of people that have come from outside Hamilton and outside Aotearoa, New Zealand, have also doubled probably in that time as well. This is a very small element of what we could and should be doing to welcome other communities, to make them feel welcomed and included, and us included in their societies as well. It's the difference between $1.10 per household per year, Kesh's motion, and 37 cents per household per year, Jeff's motion. I would rather put the $1.10 in. I suspect that even that's not enough. You need to put it in context of the overall expenditure. We're spending a lot more on new things in other areas than we are in this very important area that is often overlooked. And Jeff himself pointed out that things like the Ukraine situation, adding sort of impetus to the need for a better welcoming programs and support available in cities like Hamilton. It's true that the ideal time for starting something like this is an LTP, when you can look at everything in better context over a longer period. But sort of better late than never is how I view it. I'm not too worried, and I don't really agree with the idea of limiting it just for 2 years. At the next LTP, we review everything, and that's in 2 years' time. So if you choose to put in $1.10 per household per year, you're going to be able to review that if it's not successful or not getting the right outcomes in 2 years anyway. Or you could slice and dice it down to 37 cents and review it at exactly the same time anyway. I think that the comment about Immigration New Zealand needing to match it, well, they may not match it in this particular fund, but Andy has already given us evidence about how they're more than matching it in some other areas, like the production of the handbook. So, it's not like they aren't putting anything in there. In fact, I suspect they're easier to deal with in terms of getting support than Kotahi. So I think let's put in the $1.10 per household per year, 75,000, and let's have a look at everything at LTP time.
Thank you. Councillor Pascoe.
Yeah, thank you. And look, I'd also like to thank Andy and his team, along with Kesh and Mark, for bringing this to us. I believe we need a welcoming program in Hamilton. For Hamiltonians, it's part of who we are to welcome new residents to the city, but I think the costs should be fairly shared. Immigration, as I mentioned earlier, is central government driven, and I think in this case they could come to the party with a much more generous contribution. And I think in some ways, as Deputy Mayor Jeff said, this is about cutting our cloth, but it's also about our whole funding principle. That we have a funding model that largely is broken, and yet we're being asked, or we're considering funding into areas which really belong and are the responsibility of other groups to fund. And we'll see throughout the next few initiatives that we're putting forward that a number of these costs are the responsibility of others and not the responsibility of landowners in Hamilton who are funding this via rates. So I'll be supporting the amendment. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Van Oosten.
Thank you, Mayor Paula, and thank you to Kesh and the work that you've done in this area, and thanks to staff with the negotiations that they've done with Immigration New Zealand. $160,000 in this environment is not to be sneezed at, and something that we can rely on to really set us up well to be the best city in New Zealand for new immigrants to settle in. We all benefit when citizens can fully participate in our society, and we have much happier and healthier, more productive people when they feel welcome and are helped to integrate into our communities. And I think that economically, these people bring a wealth of knowledge and can be very valuable to our society. It's not just about us giving, but also encouraging them to feel welcome to give back. And so I'm really confident that we'll see some really positive outcomes when we look back and review this decision today. I'm supporting Kesh's motion and asking that we participate in that process and give our full backing to support a welcoming plan that will be successful, and I'm sure will be vindicated when it is reviewed in the next couple of years when we come back to have a look at it and further funding and long-term plans. So thank you, Kesh, and thank you, staff, for that. I'll be supporting the motion.
Thank you. Just in case you didn't see councillors, Melanie has got a timer going in the background. She'll call out time or something similar, just to let you know, and then it will be your last statement. Thanks, Maxine. Councillor Donovan.
Yeah. Oh, excuse me. Thank you, Paula. I'm really quite compromised and torn here because I sit in the Welcoming Communities committee as well, and well, I volunteered even before I got elected to council because one of the things I believe in is similar to the famous Maori proverb, and I'm going to have to read it, is it he tangata, he tangata, he tangata, it is the people, it is the people, it is the people. And if we've got people in our community who are contributing through something that we've set up and helped them establish themselves in this fine city of ours, then we are really going to see the benefit of that long term. However, on the other side, I agree with Deputy Mayor Jeff and Rob's amendment is it's prudent to not throw money, good money after bad, if that's the right word to use. I'm also going to use another saying here. We do have a cost of living crisis going on. That's too, Angela, and it's something that I think would dovetail in behind that situation of giving us an asset that people can actually use when they come here. Like I said, we need people to keep all facets of our community operating. They are our greatest asset. I mean, you talk to any person who's run a business and they'll tell you people are your greatest asset. I've lost my train of thought, but yeah. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor Paula. Look, first of all, my thanks to Cash for being a champion in this area. You've got my respect, and thank you for the work. Look, I think a lot of people have raised, rightly so, a lot of emotional issues about how important the contribution immigrants and refugees make to New Zealand, and they do. And I haven't heard one elected member say that they don't. What I have heard elected members say that, a lot of the responsibility for immigration and how we manage immigration, rightly so, is held by Wellington. And I think sometimes we selectively ignore the fact that Wellington, in undertaking their work, empower and fund multiple agencies for the delivery. And I'm very mindful of the amount of contracts that the Red Cross have for managing refugees. I recall recently with Afghanistan, all the funding of welcoming and introduction and finding work and finding housing was provided by the Red Cross. The government provided them the quantum. The Red Cross, who are the experts in this area, did the implementation. So although I acknowledge with the most recent barbaric events in the Ukraine, we will have additional arrivals, and rightly so, I remind elected members that that will be managed by Immigration New Zealand, and it will be managed through organisations like the Red Cross. I find it a little unfair for some of my colleagues to try to trivialize the quantums involved here. Let's have a bit of a reality check. Immigration New Zealand is offering 160,000 spread over 3 years. The motion in front of us commits Hamilton ratepayers to $1 million over 10. So we would be throwing in 75 and they would be throwing in 53,000. Now, the other thing I have to remind everybody, and maybe Councillor McPherson particularly, in his narrative about $1.10 versus 37 cents, let's get it right. We're borrowing. We're having to borrow to put the electricity on. We're borrowing every cent in the discussions we're having here today. We're borrowing on behalf of the ratepayers. And some of you are convinced that the sun will rise tomorrow and that this will not be an ongoing burden. You're wrong. The burden today will be transferred onto the next generation. We've got to start cutting our cloth, and this is a responsible approach to the matter by supporting the amendment.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Mayor Paula. Firstly, I want to support Kesh on this particular initiative. I want to acknowledge the passion and drive that she's brought to this, and I know that it's something that's been really important to her from day one in terms of driving positive outcomes for diversity and inclusion in Hamilton on this council. And I also just want to note that the purpose of this, it's to improve social and cultural well-being, but it also recognises the really critical role that immigrants and newcomers play in terms of our economy here in Hamilton. And I think the lockdowns that we've had and the closed borders have really demonstrated how critical it is for us to be able to welcome new people into our city, to actually fill in roles and jobs that otherwise can be difficult to fill. And that's actually one of the drivers of the increase in cost of living at the moment, is our closed borders. And so I think it's critical, and now is a really critical time to actually be investing, ensuring that when people arrive here, they feel welcome, but they also want to stay and continue to contribute to our economy here. We've recently, in terms of talking around what's our role and central government's role, I actually see this sitting within our role. We are benefiting from having newcomers come to Hamilton in a very real sense, and so I think we need to value them and value that contribution. Kia ora.
Councillor O'Leary.
Thank you, Mayor Paula. Yeah, I'm a little bit torn on this as well. I agree with some of the previous comments. This is and should be the work of central government, and it should be funded by central government. But I've been consistent in my main concern in that this particular funding stream feels like it's getting a head start above our two other community funds. And I understand the slight nuanced difference, but it is a new project and a very worthy project that I support. But I am going to support the amendment because I am more comfortable with it being sort of a quasi-trial for 2 years to get it up and running, to see what outcomes we can achieve with it. I hope that it's more than just translating words into several books that could end up being coffee table books. What these communities need is, yes, to understand where to get helpful information, but more importantly, tangible ways to help them improve their settling into our city and our way of life. And I need to be convinced of that. It is a new trial and a new project, and I don't see anything wrong with that being sort of a trial. So I'm happy to support this in terms of the amendment, and I look forward to being able to really cement it when it's proven itself through our next LTP, if I'm re-elected around the table. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gallagher.
Thank you. The other day, I reflect on the different experiences we have as colleagues in our life journeys. And I totally respect the movers and supporters of the amendment and the reason you're doing that. I'm going to be supporting the motion because Kesh knows all too well, and her family, the journey that many migrants make to Hamilton. And this is about partnership. This is not about a central government or local government. Years ago, I was with Barbara Redfern and others welcoming Somali refugees to the old boys' hostel opposite Melville High. No one talked about central or local government. We all talked about the community. We all talked about partnership. We all wanted new arrivals, new people who would add amazing wealth and vitality to our community. We all wanted to do everything we could to make them welcome. With respect, and I will be emotional, what would Philip Young be saying to me right now? I know what he'd be saying to me. Martin, support the motion. Support the motion. And I just want to honour the work that Andy and Jovi and the late Philip Young done, and many other people, the Settlement Centre, many other people in this area. So yes, I will be emotional. yes, I will be emotional and I will be supporting this motion. And I'm sorry, with respect, Dave does make a point. But I do respect if we lose it, at least we have 25. But I would much prefer us to listen to Councillor Kesh and frankly, her wisdom and her own journey and her own knowledge in this area.
Thank you. Thank you for your debate. You can see that everybody's wanted to talk to it. It shows how important it is to people. Like a number of people, I've been in your shoes, Kesh, and I've seen the need for our migrant communities, and that will be an enduring need for a period of time. Love the program. I think I'm in the camp with Councillor Hamilton. However, where just because of what we're going through right now with the pressures of COVID, with the cost of living, with some other projects that are all coming across the line too, that we have to be as expedient as possible. But I want to give it a best shot at starting. So I think the compromise position is the one that Jeff and Rob have brokered. And in that respect, that's where I'm going to cast my vote. Having said that, I still think there's a lot more we can do within the organisational budget to enable and empower our migrant communities. I know the team do great work, but we need to always be looking for the next ways to improve that. And so I certainly encourage all communities to look into our other grants and funds to help them do the work that they're doing, such as the, I must say that I'm really excited and impressed with the settlement centre and its expansion and its ability to reach out even further into our community. And seeing all of those things in context is important to me. All right, thank you. We'll go to, oh no, right reply, Kesh, sorry.
Thank you, Mayor Paula. And I want to say thank you to my colleagues for your kind words and for your support in whichever form it may come. I want to quickly remind everyone that 27% of Hamiltonians were not born here. That means 27% of ratepayers will be contributing to whatever decision we make today. So how would you think they would want their rates spent? How do you think they would want their money prioritized, knowing the struggles that they've been through when they move to a new city and a new country? I also just want to say quickly that, yes, I completely understand the need for reviewing this after 2 years. But like someone said, we can review this whole project again in the LTP. The whole thing will come up again. In terms of the money, it's not just 25,000 that Immigration New Zealand is contributing. They're contributing 160,000 to this program, and it's only 25,000 earmarked and ring-fenced for this particular purpose. In fact, we've had good conversations with the Ministry of Ethnic Communities, also for more funding from central government for other projects linked to the welcoming plan, such as the Collingwood Street project, which we'll talk about later. But there are other avenues of funding that's coming through. So it's not just council, it's actually central government as well. And like I said, you know, by getting this work done today, it's not just the immigrants or refugees or newcomer sector that will be benefiting, but it's actually the whole city as a whole, because it's your cultural benefits, your economic benefits, plus your social benefits. And like we all agree, the newcomers play such an important role in Hamilton's society. It's just a way to show our support. And to finish with a small quick quote, diversity is having a seat at the table. Inclusion is having a voice, but belonging is having that voice be heard. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. Thanks, Kesh. We'll go to the vote for the amendment to begin with.
excuse me, Mayor Paula, could we just start that again?
Oh, yeah, okay.
I can see you smiling, Deputy Mayor.
Easily done, isn't it?
All right, let's go back. Can you clear that? Thank you. It's a tough one.
Councillor Donovan. Wonderful, thank you. The amendment is carried. 7 for, 5 against. Those against are Councillor McPherson, Councillor Naidoo-Ralph, Councillor Gallagher, Councillor Van Oosten and Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. We go to the substantial vote now, please. Kish?
The amendment as the substantive motion is carried unanimously.
Okay, councillors, I was hoping to get through one more before we have a break, but we have been sitting quite a while, so we're going to take a 10-minute stretch, and then we're going to come through and get into school travel planning. To get through the agenda today, I'm going to rely on you keeping your debate to short and sharp, so that we can have a substantive debate on the very end of the day. Thanks, everyone. See you soon. Okay, everyone, are we just there? 1 minute, 2 minutes? 1 minute? We all back? We able to start, Amy?
I'll just need a couple more cameras on so I can confirm quorum.
Mark, Angela, can you put your camera on so we know that Sarah's there?
We have quorum.
We have quorum? Excellent, thank you. Councillors, to get through all of this list, it would be really good. I know we've agreed to look at each one rather than by exception, but if it's remembering that we've had a lot of discussion on some of these things in workshops and what have you, if we can just stick to short, sharp questions and expedient debate, we'll get through your day much quicker and won't have to call on you tomorrow. So let's now move to school travel planning.
Mayor Paul, I've just put in the chat that this is resolution F3 on page 199, and the detail of this is on page 217 in Diligent.
Thank you. Got that. Thank you.
So, Mayor Paula, I'm happy to do a quick intro for you. It's Robin Denton here, if you'd like, get started.
Yes, please.
So just a quick recap of where we're at, councillors. The request for staff to investigate school travel plans for all schools across the city came through as part of the Korikori Green pedestrian mall work that was completed last year, and was in response to feedback that we got through that process about the congestion outside schools. We pulled forward a report in December and as part of the Infrastructure Ops Committee, and pulled together some indicative funding requirements for that to deliver to all schools, and that started at 380,000 and went up to just over $1 million, and then settled back after a 5-year period to about $960,000. Elected members gave us feedback at that stage that they were concerned about that and the details, so we had a workshop in February. As a result of that workshop, we have put forward a revised proposal to do a pilot of some schools, and proposed funding of 105,000 for year one, well, it'd be year two of this current LTP, and then 130,000, with the ability to then to run that as a pilot, to do some learning, and then to consider what funding would move forward through the LTP process from there onwards. At this stage, the funding we are expecting to be 100% local share. We do note that there are potential funding partners, so Waka Kotahi would be one, for example, that we would be looking to try and get some co-investment from, and we'd have to work through that. I have spoken to the local Ministry of Ed folks, and they don't believe that they have funding to contribute directly to it, but we, I think, should be looking to them providing in-kind support through resources within the school to support such programs. And then finally, we have the Waikato Regional Council. Again, they don't have direct funding available, but there are opportunities potentially with bus concession fares and those sorts of things that we could proceed, well, continue to progress if we do get some funding in this area. At this stage, the intention would be through the Eastern Pathways funding for the school link to utilise a school travel plan approach for the schools immediately adjacent to that, with funding from the Eastern Pathways project, because we're going to need to have that sort of involvement of schools to make that project successful. So if we do get funding for this, their proposal would be to work with the Rototuna Schools cluster and to continue to progress and build on to the great work that's already been in place with the Rototuna High, with their high percentage of children who are travelling via scooters, bikes, etc. So I'm happy to take any questions from there.
Thank you. Councillor McPherson.
Thanks, Mayor Paula. Thanks, Robin, for that good little summary. Just looking at the potential funding partnership side of things, can you remind us of the program that NZTA used to fund a few years ago for school travel planning that we got some money out of, and what happened with that and why? I'm looking at the sort of, because that was an area that they were very active in at one point.
So I guess history, we did get a higher percentage of funding into these sorts of activities, and as part of the financial assistance rate review, so the FAR, there was a revision for these sorts of activities down to 51%. And while Waka Kotahi do provide some support as in sort of national guidelines for approach to this sort of work, there is a potential that we can get some subsidy through the general road safety action planning and also through the travel demand management. But we're not 100%
I'm not
certain.
talking about that. I'm
sorry,
talking about
sorry, I've missed the point. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm talking about what happened 7 or 8 years ago when we actually went up to 3 school travel planning staff working in that field, of which a significant amount was funded by NZTA. I think we had to put in a share.
Yeah, sorry, that was I think just before I was back at council. So it's actually probably more like 10 years, I think, that that those staff are in place.
Yeah, I remember it was still in place in 2014. Okay,
sorry.
so that, yeah, all right. Look, makes it a bit difficult not having that sort of background, because that was something that the NZTA encouraged us to, and the government of the time, which was a blue government, I might add, encouraged us to be part of. Okay, so you talked about it slipping to 51%, the amount of the proportion of funding from Waka Kotahi, but when you introduced this, you were implying that there was no funding share at all from NZTA. So I'm a bit confused now.
So the assumption that we have made at this stage, because this is a new item into the LTP process, the assumption we're making at this stage is that there is going to be no subsidy from Waka Kotahi for these 2 years of trial or pilot. We will obviously be trying to get some funding, but that will be dependent on Waka Kotahi having funding available, because it hasn't been put up as part of our base bid. Moving forward beyond that, I think we've got a very good chance of it being included in our normal program as we work through the LTP process.
Okay, so we have got one school travel planner at the moment, haven't we, Cam?
He does. It's more of a coordination role. He does a little bit of travel planning, but he's also doing cycling education and just dealing with the key issues that they have at the school gate. So some of his time.
Is that position funded in part by Waka Kotahi?
Yes.
Yeah. So, and we're looking to expand in the same area, basically, is what he's doing, but more
Correct.
Specific to the travel planning aspect of his job.
Correct.
So it's not sort of a new type of funding for Waka Kotahi. It's just a new quantum that we're seeking.
Correct.
Okay. Thanks.
Councillor Pascoe.
Yeah, thank you, and thanks, Robin, for your explanation. I take it from reading it, the cost is for a staff member in each of those 2 years.
Yes, we have costs for a staff member and a small amount of 15,000 and 30,000 for some resources to assist with, comms, working with the schools. It may be things like some additional signs reminding parents about where appropriate parking should be undertaken, or it might be a drop-off point and those sorts of things to assist with that sort of it. But primarily the funding is around a resource of a person to do some work.
And in terms of the in-kind assistance, if we got any in-kind assistance from Waikato Regional Council or MOE, is that likely to reduce either of those two costs?
No, it will meet the project rather than supplement or rather than reduce the costs to council.
Okay, just a question now to Lance, if he's on the line there. Just look, Lance, looking back at last year's LTP, the personnel line had a $13 million increase from 21 to 22, which was about a 15% increase. And I'm just asking the question whether this particular initiative, which is a staff member or two staff members over 2 years, and the one that's in 5 that we're yet to consider, which also looks like another staff member, whether that can't be funded somehow from the $13 million personnel cost increase in last year's budget, rather than looking to a brand new spend.
Councillor Rob, I think the new positions that were in the 10-year plan and the increase you're talking about were for specific roles. Now, Robin and Eva Lisa are able to mention whether or not these ones were covered, which I presume they weren't.
Yeah.
I'd be a bit nervous about committing to that when the positions that were put in the budget previously were for specific areas of council which you worked through. So I think we would be looking at, rather than trying to squeak more out of what we've got at the moment, is actually, if you want to do this, I think you'd be needing new resource.
Yeah, it was a large increase, and I remember raising it at the time and was told that it was necessary. But, you know, it was a much bigger increase in that year than it typically is in each of the years in the last long-term plan, as well as in this long-term plan. I guess, you know, following on from the last discussion, it's a question of seeing whether or not we can reduce some of the costs rather than adding them on. And that's a concern I think a number of elected members have. But anyway, if that's not possible, or it's not possible to look at today to see whether there's any opportunity, we'll just box on. Thanks. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And bearing in mind that everything that councillors have asked for additional information, it's my expectation that it comes back the next time we get to see this, and it will be picked up in a staff report in some way, so that we don't have loose ends when we come to the final voting. Is that fine? Councillor Thompson.
Thanks, Mayor Paula. So in conversations with Chair Angela Strange at WRC and also their staff there, they're very keen to support a school travel planning initiative. Robin, would it be possible before the next time we're, I guess, here deliberating the annual plan to approve it, that we could have a bit more information from then on how they believe they would be able to provide in-kind support or other support? But also, if we're looking at the Rotorua school cluster, an indication of how they intend to support any initiative.
Yes, I'm happy to do some more work in that area.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Taylor.
Thanks, Mayor Paula. Robin, we haven't got NZTA co-funding for this. So is that because we haven't gone through the normal process that we would for something like this? We'd normally take it through our LTP process?
Correct.
Right. So if we hold on and take it through the LTP process, then we'd have a better chance of getting some matching funding.
Yes, we've got a better chance. We still do have a chance with other councils potentially underspending to be able to get some funding, particularly in year 3. And that's something that we'll continue to work on, as we always do. But better chance, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. No further questions. Sarah, you had in the chat, I think, a motion or an amendment to the staff motion, yes? And I haven't seen any others. So can we just, has Amy got that? Or did you see it, Amy? Yeah, all right, perfect.
And so it's just added noting that we'll continue to seek co-funding and in-kind support.
Otherwise, it's exactly the same as staff one at the top.
Yes.
Okay. There being no further amendments, we will get into the debate. We've had all the questions. You're the mover, Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. Is it possible to exit screen? So it's a little weird talking to a blank screen. So firstly, I think this is a really pragmatic approach. We had quite a large spend put before us, which would have a large ongoing operating cost, and elected members showed concern around that, but also wanted to understand what this would actually deliver. So here we've got a pilot program which will not only give us a lot of really useful data going forward on how effective the school travel planning is, but it will inform long-term plan discussions. So we're not flying blind. We will have real data ahead in front of us, and then we can decide whether we take the bigger bite and fund travel for all school clusters in Hamilton. So I think that's really important, and that's why I really want to support the timing of this now. I also I know that there'll be comments around, this isn't our role, this is a school's role, but I look at it quite differently. I do think that we need to work hard to get them to partner with us, to provide support in kind, and also to work with the ministry for more co-funding and other opportunities. And I know that the emissions working group led by WRC has already set up meetings on that. But this is really no different to, say, if you look at the ACC building, where we've responded to increased demand on the transport system. And in that case, we're looking at putting in an investment in hard infrastructure. In this case, we're looking at responding to increased demand on the transport system by doing something a bit differently with soft infrastructure, you could say. And actually that will reduce in time the amount of investment we need to put into hard infrastructure, because we know the more people using our transport system, the more pressure on it, the more we have safety concerns, and the more we have to keep putting into intersection upgrades and other projects. So this is a way of dealing with increased demand on the system in a way which is going to be more cost effective in the long run, in my view. But I think in the end, after these 2 years, it will be the data and the results that hopefully tell that story.
Thank you. Councillor Wilson.
Oh, sorry, Mayor Paula, me as the seconder.
Yes, sorry, didn't see your hand. Off you go.
Yeah, thank you. Support everything what Councillor Thompson has said. This is a timing issue, why this is here now for our annual plan and not included. The work wasn't quite ready for our LTP that we did this term, so that's why it's here. And look, we have to break the back. We have to start of the significant impact that school travel has on our network. This is just the starting step for that by bringing on a new position to work on that. And as Councillor Thompson has so rightly said, it will give us the data and give us a plan of action where we'll be able to deliver tangible projects in our LTP. And it's something we've been talking about for years. And ironically, all that while we've been waiting and agonising over this, the network has, of course, got significantly more detrimentally affected. So we've got to start this one. I want to see us do a lot more in the future, and hopefully we will be able to do that with data. And all of it will connect, of course, with our biking and micromobility projects and the school link. If we can achieve a really good, strong percentage of mode shift for students, we are going to really impact positively on our transportation network. So I'm keen about that. Look, colleagues, you know this it irks me, and it will irk many of us, that the Ministry of Education appears unwilling to tackle this problem, pretty much unwilling to tackle it since they removed school buses from our roading network. And that particular issue needs, I think, a plan of attack to be addressed politician to politician. And I'm frustrated with that because the pressure on our network has a dribble down effect on our residents, on our infill, on our safety. And my worry, if we don't start this work with some urgency, is that because of a growing city, because of more transportation on the roads, infill and everything else that we've talked about, that more students will be put at risk getting to school and crossing roads, and that really, really worries me as well. NZTA, WRC and Ministry of Education should be sitting around the table, formulating a proper plan and funding it together with us. And this is something that the Deputy Chair, Councillor Thompson, is very passionate about, and we have agreed she will take the lead on. So very supportive of this motion and hope the colleagues are as well. Thank you. Thank you, Me Paula.
Thank you, Councillor McPherson.
Thanks, Mayor Paula. Look, I was a couple further down the track and speaking, but so I'm actually glad I'm following Angela, because she said a lot of the sorts of things that I'm thinking. She used the sort of unparliamentary language of being irked by the Ministry of Education. I would have used much more diplomatic language, like saying I'm extremely pissed off at their lack of support for something that's clearly their enterprises contribute to. They don't pay rates. They don't pay support for the effect that they have on our community. They don't even help us try and stagger the starting hours of schools so you can spread the load on our transport network. There's a whole host of things the Ministry of Education thinks that its responsibilities end outside the front door of their headquarters in Wellington, I suspect. But Waka Kotahi is also a problem in this area. Robin was away from here for a few years, but some years ago they actually approached us and offered us funding in this area, and I believe it was 75% subsidy for 3 staff, provided we put in the other 25%. And we had a very, for 3 years, effective program at implementing school travel plans, which then fell by the wayside because, sort of predictably, our council didn't want to pick up 100% of the cost of that when Waka Kotahi's forerunner dropped that. So, there's been a lack of consistency in continuity and sustainability from the government in this area. I'm critical that Waka Kotahi puts far more into the building of big roads than it does into what I think Sarah called soft infrastructure in this area. It's absolutely short-sighted and crazy. That I don't think Waka Kotahi have even read the government's transport strategy, let alone do anything to ensure their investment follows it. The congestion that we get during school time is what is breaking the back of our transport network in Hamilton. If we could lower the congestion at all starting and finishing times, spread the load, we could handle it better. And that's the sort of thing that school travel planning addresses. It's an investment. It is a soft investment, but it's an investment in lowering our future costs and making our city work more efficiently. So we really need to support this. Unfortunately, the others are not yet across the line.
Thank you, Councillor Van Oosten.
Thank you. Look, I'm not sure if many of you have been outside the school gate at the end of the day to see the kind of congestion that Robin talked about when she was presenting the paper, but certainly I know that that's been in a subject in the Waikato Times in recent years, and that Councillor Sarah and Councillor Mark Bunting have both been challenging us to think better about how we recognise the need to change that. We have an opportunity, and we've got a huge investment already committed through the Eastern Pathways and the school link of up to $66 million, which will be transformational, I believe. But none of that will change the behaviours of people if they don't understand the benefits and commit to the usage and take up the opportunity to do this. The best way for that to happen is to put a staff member in there to help lead that discussion, to be able to talk to the schools of interest, the schools that are on that link. And I understand that more than 130, or rather 13,000 households along that group, along that pathway, can benefit from that. So without that person helping to lead that conversation and to bring people on board and to be able to free up those roadways, that this cannot happen just on its own. It'd be nice to think that you build it and it'll happen, but my experience shows me that unless you've got some real dedicated resource to help turn objectors into supporters, then these things don't happen. So in my mind, this is a really good investment, and as a pilot, it gives us the opportunity to be able to think about how we then promote it further outside of this time frame and into our long-term plan. So I'll be supporting Sarah and Councillor Angela's good motion.
Thank you. Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor Paula. I will not be voting in support of this. The reality is you've all articulated that both the school, the Ministry of Ed and Waka Kotahi should be the ones participating in this, and I think you're right. And the one sure way of ensuring they don't is if we fund it now. They'll simply say, we didn't need to do that. We'll just let those good old ratepayers borrow more to do our job for us. Makes total sense if I was sitting in their shoes. There is no urgency to this matter. This matter should be a part of a discussion in the LTP, where we could have had time to ensure Waka Kotahi and others are going to participate with us. The reality is the congestion that's being produced is horrendous. And guess who is it affecting? The very parents who choose to drive their kids to school. They could stop it by simply stop driving their kids to school and letting them find alternative ways, like catching a bus, walking, and other mechanisms. And to be honest, this should be discussed at the LTP. I also further agree with Councillor Pascoe. This is, if we are to fund it, and it could be something we look at LTP, it needs to come out of existing personnel budget. This ongoing habit of ours of underspending, but adding more and more staff numbers and quantums, budgetary elements is well beyond our means. We've got to cut our cloth, so I will not be supporting it.
Councillor Pascoe.
The suggestion from two councillors at the time is now the right time to start funding this could never be far from the truth. If you look at the current graphs showing currently an OPEX balancing the books deficit is now $14 million compared with $2 million when we signed off the LTP 9 months ago. There are other parties who are responsible for funding this. And again, like the last matter that we considered, why should we be the initiator and the sole funder of these projects? I mean, who should be funding this? The police. Councillor Ewan mentioned the parents, but there's also the Ministry of Education and Waikato Regional Council. who want to and who actually manage the public transport network. At the moment, not one of those parties is even prepared to come to the party with some funding to help get this going. So either they believe that we won't succeed, as Councillor McPherson perhaps may have suggested in his debate, that early attempts to do this with a significant subsidy fell short when the period of the contract fell. Maybe it didn't work last time, and maybe it's not going to work this time. So hence the reason why they're not interested in coming to the party financially now. So I won't be supporting this, not because I think that we don't need this work to be done, but again, because I don't believe it is the responsibility of council to use ratepayers' funds to fund something that clearly belongs and is the responsibility of other groups. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Taylor.
Thanks, Mayor Paula. Yeah, two things bother me about this proposal. It's a new staff member, and secondly, it's a plan, another plan. And I'm a little tired of plans. This council is full of plans. We're always making plans, paying people to do plans, paying contractors to do plans, paying staff to do plans. I think we're being slack here. If we were really lean and mean, we would find a staff member or a vacancy from elsewhere, and we've got plenty, and shift them across to do this so we weren't funding a new salary. If it was my own money, that's what I'd be doing. We've taken the easy option here of adding to our bureaucracy instead of repurposing someone else or using a vacancy for one of our other positions. Councillor Van Oosten talked about challenging us. Well, let's challenge ourselves to find a way to do this without lazily adding to our budget. I suggest we take this to the LTP where it should be, and that way we can discuss it, come up with a decent plan which isn't ad hoc, and at that point we can get or look for co-funding from NZTA and others. Thanks.
Councillor Gallagher.
Yeah, yes, I fully support Councillor Sarah, and I mean, this is where basically the chair of the infrastructure and the deputy chair of the infrastructure have come to us. Frankly, there's no time that is the right time. We're either going to show some decisive leadership, or it's the same old, same old. You know, we are in the midst of a major issue in this issue, and it's all very well with respect to say, you know, let the kids walk and cycle and bike and all of this. This is where actually the local government of the day has to show some clear, concise leadership. So, and I totally respect the alternative point of view in terms of sincerity of that, but with respect, I think now is the time, and this is the time where I will be listening to the considered advice and hard work of my good colleagues, Angela and Sarah.
Thank you. I'll make a few comments here. This is an excellent initiative, without doubt, and needed. But I accept the point that we have to cut our coat according to our cloth, as Ewan said. And we're really funding constrained at this time. And there's all kinds of things that are going on in the wider financial environment that stack against adding new projects. But I find that really tricky. There is a difference between staff vacancies and spare staff, and I just want to make the point that we don't have much spare staff. Our staff are fully, we've talked about this and their well-being. Our staff are snowed. They're really working to their hardest capacity, and I don't think we can impose upon them additional work. So I'm happy to continue to press on government for additional funding and to make sure that they understand the pressures that are coming on a fast growing city, and it's all related in my mind. We're growing faster than other parts of New Zealand. We need to respond to the challenges of climate. We need to respond to the challenges of transport, infrastructure and our housing and so on. We get told that waka kotahi are oversubscribed. That seems to be a statement of fact, and they're highly contested, and we have to keep putting in our bid against everyone else's bid, and that's a whole sort of lottery really as to what comes out, no matter how good your projects are. My view is that Waka Kotahi most definitely need to be part of this. That we can't afford right at the moment to go alone, unfortunately. Waka Kotahi must be alongside this if mode shift is truly to be achieved. If Waka Kotahi hold mode shift as a firm aspiration and reality, they need to come alongside. But I tell you, in terms of this plan, who also needs to get alongside is the Ministry of Education. And that they used to be involved in the beginning around the conversation about school travel plans. And we really do need them to be, because it's their community they're keeping safe as well. So look, I'm more than happy to be a strong arm of a political voice alongside Sarah with this. And we are trying to have those conversations. We've had some recently, and we need to keep pressing on government that they really need to understand that if Hamilton is to deliver the benefits that New Zealand Inc. wants, which is housing, growth, mode shift, etc., then we need some support for government, because it's just too much to ask of the ratepayers at this time, given what the other levers they're facing. So we'll go to the vote.
Sorry, write a reply.
Oh, sorry, let's clear the vote. Clear the vote. Sorry, Sarah, write a reply.
Thank
Apologies.
you. Well, I've already done the numbers and with some disappointment, but I do want to still respond to some of the comments made. Firstly, around funding this and the comments that means we're closing off opportunities for co-funding. By not funding this, we are absolutely closing off opportunities for co-funding. If we put this in our draft annual plan, that gives staff the ability to go and seek co-funding from Waka Kotahi. If we don't put it in, they have nothing to stand on in terms of seeking co-funding. Secondly, there was a comment from Councillor Robb that the likes of WRC have no interest in this. In my conversations, or that that was the impression that I got from those comments. And
point of order, the comment Councillor Sarah was around financial interest, financial funding, not interest. They're all interested.
Thanks, Councillor Robb. So WRC has no, the comment was there was no willingness to put a financial stake into this, but I would say that's not correct. The conversations that I have had with Councillor Angela Strange, with Angie Rilson from WRC, and now Mark Tamura, have made it very clear that the Waikato Regional Council wants to work with us, would be willing to put on additional bus routes to put the funding into that, but that they need to do it in an integrated way with other modes of transport like walking and cycling. And so they're waiting on us to take a lead in terms of actually delivering some of the school travel planning, so then they can support that. So what we're doing now is closing off that opportunity as well to work with them over the next 2 years. There was also the comment that there's no urgency, and I absolutely refute that. We're facing a climate emergency where we have less than 8 years to halve emissions globally. And what is our city doing? Hardly enough. It is hardly doing enough. And it's easy to say, hey, there's no urgency. But actually, 8 years is a very short period of time to actually transform our economy and how we move around. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go to the vote.
The motion is carried, noting Councillor Wilson, Councillor Pascoe, Deputy Mayor Taylor and Councillor Donovan are dissenting.
Thank you. It shows the power of a good debate sometimes, Sarah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you. Good point, Your Worship.
Okay, now we're going to the staff travel plan, please. And we have had pretty good round table discussions about this, so I don't want to go into long conversation. Do you want to introduce it, Robin, and then a few questions for clarity or anything, and then we'll go to the motion.
Thank you, Mayor Paula. I guess the big thing to note here is that some of these plans get somewhat overtaken by time. So at the time of putting these numbers together, we were looking to try and get a 50% uptake of our staff to use public transport. As councillors are no doubt aware, the government has announced some PT subsidy moving forward for the next 3 months. And we do have reduced numbers of staff actually working in the office. So I guess what we're aiming for here is to try and create some opportunities working with staff who are coming into the office to try and use public transport and to subsidise that cost of travel. The funding application of 163 was probably realistic at the time of putting it forward, but we are in a different sort of situation now. So if elected members wanted to, then a lower figure would be still able to be used to create a pilot and to get some of that early change happening as people do return to the office. So I'm happy to answer any questions from there.
There are some questions, and Dave's asked to move the motion. But we'll get to that. Yeah. My question is, how long is a piece of string? A lower budget? What are you suggesting is
Paula,
required?
can I actually, as the mover, make a suggestion on that before?
Yeah, we haven't got your motion on the thing yet, but yes, certainly.
Well,
yeah, go.
There's a proposal which I've said I'd move.
Yeah.
But, so the amount that I'm suggesting is 50,000.
Okay. So my question, I guess, to you, Robin, is 50,000 a doable amount?
Yes, that will get us started. And I think on top of the government's subsidy for the next 3 months at least will be a good starting point. That will enable us to get some cards purchased and to do some promotion on top of the other workplace travel planning work that we are doing. So it's not just a plan, it's actually implementing the plan that we're talking about here.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McPherson, have you got another question? Your hand?
Yeah, I did. In relation to something Robin's just said, actually, what's the other measures that you're talking about as part of the staff travel plan? Just a real brief outline, if you don't mind, Robin, thanks.
So the other measures include e-bike proposals and getting, so we've got e-bike purchases and doing promotion of them. Carpooling is another one that we're promoting for staff, and also looking at how we promote active travel, so supporting staff who are wanting to particularly cycle, return to cycling in many cases by helping them with some training and confidence building so that they are able to do that with confidence.
And the last question, sorry, from me is what other significant employers are we working with on business travel plans, if that's the right term, in Hamilton?
Yes, so we've been working with the Waikato Regional Council and the Waikato DHB. So Regional Council, when they did their relocation and offered this sort of incentive, had a 60% uptake of their staff to move to travel by bus as a result of this sort of initiative. And the DHB are in the process of investigating this so that they can roll it out next financial year for their staff as well.
Thanks.
Deputy Mayor Taylor.
Thank you, Mayor Paula. Just clarifying. So this proposal still involves residents funding 50% of staff's bus fares for a year, or not?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Councillor O'Leary.
Thank you. Thanks, Robin. The proposal, yeah, suggests involves 50% of staff's bus fares for 1 year, but given the government has reduced it by 50%, is that, are you still wanting to go forward with that, which means that it would be 50% of the 50% that's still, which means they'd be paying 25% of a normal bus fare?
So the government initiative, I understand, is only for 3 months at this stage.
Yeah.
So that'll get us to the beginning of next financial year.
Yeah.
So that's to continue to provide that, and as we see increasing number of staff actually returning to working in the office, and we recognising that we have got lower numbers working in the office, I think Councillor Dave's suggestion of 50k as a starting point to get things up and running will be a good start for us.
Yeah, and the carpool. Look, I think carpooling's too old-fashioned now, but didn't we do a carpooling initiative some years back, and there was in a tiny minuscule percentage of people that did it, or it didn't work at all?
So that was when we were working with a national initiative around that, and I think what we understand works better is actually if you're working within your employer rather than going wider and trying to, I guess, provide linkages between different workplaces. So we believe that working within council, and ultimately we probably can work within regional council, is it gives people a better degree of comfort, personal security comfort often around the person that they're actually meeting to come to jump in the car with. And then there's opportunities for promoting that where we can look at car parks, for example, in the Garden Place car park to be more readily available for those people who are carpooling, as opposed to the single vehicle type stuff. So they're the sorts of opportunities that we're looking to roll out.
And I'm assuming the most impact we would get from a project like this would be from the municipal building, and all things taken into account with, most people working at home at the moment. Have you done the survey on current staff that would be willing to enter a program to make a mode shift? Do we know what that number or percentage would be?
For the use of bus services in particular, the survey indicated about 15% of staff were at the time of that survey using bus services, with an additional 28% saying that they'd be interested. Now, that interest, I think, is twofold. One is around affordability, because there is this feeling that bus travel is more expensive than taking your personal car. But the other thing is just that confidence, and that's where we can work with regional council to help people understand how the bus system works and find out which buses are going past them and when, and that sort of thing. And so just dealing with those couple of barriers would be part of what this initiative allows us to do.
So still no rough estimate of around 30% shift. Well, no.
So an additional,
an additional
30%, well, 28% of staff moving from what they're currently doing to using bus travel.
So less than 50% of staff willing to, or have already indicated they were willing to shift, with the 15% and the 27.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Thank you. Thanks, Mayor Paula.
Thank you, Councillor Van Oosten.
Thanks, Robin. With regard to the government's 50% subsidy on buses, that's initially for a 3-month period. Do we have any early intel on potential for that to be extended beyond that 3 months?
I don't know. Sorry. Yeah, I don't know whether anyone else does.
Right. No, I don't personally. Although I understood there was the opportunity for that to be explored through the budget in May.
Yeah, quite possibly. I don't know. Sorry, Councillor.
Kia ora, thank you.
Councillor Thompson.
Thanks, Mayor Paula. Robin, if the government does decide to extend the half price fares beyond 3 months, what would that mean for us in this budget? Would it be a case of it going back into the general pool, or what would happen in that case?
So I guess there's two components to this funding. One is that subsidy, but the other is actually just purchasing the B cards and getting people equipped with it. So that's still some work that we'd be looking to do with whatever funding elected members decide to give towards this initiative. And if there is unspent funds, then that's always going to be the possibility at the end of the period. It's just really hard to predict what next financial year is actually going to look like, both in terms of government decisions, but also the number of staff who are returning and back into the workplaces. Can I just also note that this initiative is not only for municipal building, it is for our satellites as well. So, you know, the museum, libraries, zoo is really well serviced by bus services. So it isn't just solely about the muni building.
Okay, thank you. And with in terms of that three months that have been announced of the half price fares, is it would the mover, Councillor Dave, would you be interested in adding to your motion or having a separate motion that we put our support behind that being extended? Or otherwise happy to take that offline?
I think that's a good idea, but I don't think it needs to be part of the motion, because I think it's a no-brainer almost, isn't it? Doesn't matter anyone's point of view.
We can take it offline.
Yeah,
Thank you. Let's not get into cross. Any further questions?
Yeah, I've got a question, Mayor Paula.
Oh, sorry. Have you finished, Sarah? Yeah, thank you. Councillor Pascoe.
Yeah, thank you. Robin, do you think Councillor Dave's estimate of 50,000 is sufficient, given that your earlier calculations were 163, and if the government did not renew the 50% subsidy beyond 30 June, which is I believe the end of the 3-month period, then we go into the next financial year with no half price government paid subsidy. We're really back, aren't we, to the 163,000, which was your initial estimate?
So the 163,000 was based on trying to get a 50% of staff using this scheme. So while the reduction down to 50K is a significant one, it probably is also reflective of the fact that we do have a lot more people working from home, and that what we're looking to do is trying to get people to not necessarily do all of their travel by bus. It could be that they do 1 day a week, for example, and working from home might be an option for another couple of days. At the end of the day, we can, I guess, manage the pilot within the funding that we get given.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. We have a mover, which was Dave. Do we have a seconder? Did I miss that? Oh, you seconding it, Deputy Mayor? No?
Thanks, Jeff.
Oh, you're mute. Who's seconding it? Councillor Van Oosten. All right, thank you.
Yeah, sorry,
Right.
Paula, I'm not seconding it.
I thought you were me, but I just saw your little yellow hand. So, right, it's been moved, it's been seconded. Now you can pop your hand up for debate. We'll move to the go to the mover first. Thanks.
Thanks, Mayor Paula. Look, I was always actually uncomfortable with the quantum of 163,000, not necessarily to say that was measured improperly or in the wrong way, but simply because I believe this is an area that staff or management of HCC should have addressed a long time ago. It's been on the books since about 2010, to be honest, when we first had Access Hamilton to get a travel plan for our staff, a business travel plan that would make a contribution and show some leadership in this area. And we've been harassing and haranguing the university and Wintec, who now have staff travel plans and 50% bus discounts. And we're now working with the regional council and the DHB, as Robin said, to do the same, but we haven't got our own one in place, except for a financial sort of some help with purchasing e-bikes. And as Angela said, a very small ride share sort of pilot. It isn't good enough that we haven't done this before. I didn't think 163,000 was necessary. I believe management could find more support within their existing budgets, because I don't just view this as something that will help us mode shift in the city, which is certainly one of the benefits. It's also a staff recruitment and retention benefit, just like some of the things that were proposed to us by staff previously, management in the last couple of months. How can we make it more attractive for our staff to work for us? We need to retain a higher proportion of them. If they are part of a staff travel plan, that's going to help in that area as well. And we are aware of some of the available finances in the next short while in that area too, which I believe management should be looking at using, as well as the 50,000. I believe that that's a reasonable ratepayer contribution to getting this off the ground finally after all these years, and getting something to actually start. Like Sarah made the point earlier on another debate, we've talked about climate emergencies and climate urgencies, and we've all voted for various wordings around that. What are we actually doing to show leadership in our community? This is a very important area where we could be showing better leadership, and I think we should be putting the hard word on management to find something from their budgets to support this contribution as well. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Deputy Mayor Taylor.
Oh, is it the seconder or?
Oh, sorry, seconder. Doesn't come up in order, Maxine.
I know. Apologies. I wasn't quite as quick as Deputy Mayor getting my hand up, but thank you all the same. And thanks, Dave, for moving this motion. I'm happy to support and second. I think that in my mind, it's really great to be leading by example. But in this instance, we're not the leaders. We're a bit like the followers. We've already asked this of large employers in our city, and I'm thinking of the DHB and the Waikato Regional Council, and asking them when they're moving offices or when they're thinking about their workforce and being able to get them into their sites, that they put together these plans, and yet we don't. And it runs the risk of us very much being not being taken seriously when we ask for that from future employers. And I think of the ACC building and perhaps some other large employers up in the Te Rapa Home Strait area. And if we can't show that we're taking this really seriously, then I think we run out of the ability to be able to influence others. And I think that that's really the reason that I'm supporting this. We need to be able to take our position here and put forward opportunities for staff to think about different ways to be able to get to work. It also impacts on our plans around parking in the city, and about it moves us also into the PT routes and frequencies debate as well. So look, I think that if we can't get council staff into thinking in different ways, then we're not going to have a very good opportunity to influence others. So I'm right behind this one, and ask for others to support it as well. It is an addition to cost, but with the adjustment in the value, look, I'm sure that that kind of minuscule amount can be found in our budget, and well supported by our residents, who will see the benefit and the faces sitting on the buses as they move around our town.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Taylor.
Thank you, Mayor Paula. Look, this proposal actually makes me angry. I think it is one of the silliest plans being discussed here today. To spend 163k or to spend 50k of residents' money to encourage our staff to travel to and from work sustainably is nanny council at its most earnest. To suggest that we would even contemplate using ratepayers' money in the middle of a cost of living crisis to subsidise our staff members so they can bus to work is ludicrous to me. It's nutty. What's more, it's rude. I would love to be a fly on the wall when we told a business struggling through months of Omicron and zero foot traffic that we intend to use their rates to help out get our staff to and from work. I want to be that fly on the wall. Not only do we want them to pay for extra childcare for councillors, now we want them to pay to get our staff to work. It's a candidate for the common sense barbecue test, and it would fail that test. I think this shows an incredible lack of respect for our residents, and I oppose it with every fibre of my being.
Thank you. Councillor Donovan.
Thank you, Mayor Paula. I 100% agree with Deputy Mayor Jeff Taylor. The optics on this from a ratepayer perspective will look horrible. End of story.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Mayor Paula. I will be supporting Councillor Dave on this for two reasons. One is that we are encouraging and requiring other businesses and organisations to travel plans and to invest in those. And we are well behind those organisations, and we should be actually providing examples of travel planning and how it can actually work. So firstly, I think it's hypocritical to be requiring other organisations to be investing in helping their staff get to work in different ways, but then not doing it ourselves. The other thing is, we signed off on 2 climate action plans, and one of the actions within that, the most recent action plan, was to develop a staff travel plan and actually implement it. And so we've committed to reducing emissions as an organisation by at least 50% by 2030. And that isn't some self-centred thing that we're doing. It's actually our residents should expect that the council that's working for them is not making their environment and their future worse by operating in a way that's unsustainable. So we need to look at it in that view. And if we don't fund this, then there's an action in the climate action plan that's just completely been disregarded. And that will impact on our ability to reach that target by 2030. So if we're going to commit to targets, commit to plans, and to be honest, not that an ambitious plan, then we do need to follow through. So that is the reason why, the key reason why I'll be supporting this.
Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor Paula. Look, I've listened to the debate, and I know the emotional argument over the environmental crisis this country and the world, in fact, is facing, and I agree that there is one. But I find it paradoxical that we will talk about the environment crisis and why we should fund significant initiatives, while at the same time funding huge other projects. You'll have my respect when you start saying no to the other huge funding projects and prioritising funding for environment. But here's the rub. The ratepayer can't keep paying for all of it. We can't just keep borrowing, councillors. We just can't keep borrowing. And on this one, it's a double whammy. The taxpayer is having to subsidise 50% as part of an initiative from Wellington, and then we're going to subsidise our own staff in addition to that. And we say we're being bold and we're setting the prime example, but we're having to borrow money to do it, and then say, hey, the ongoing burden can be dumped on our children. Now, this isn't about not wanting to support travel plans. I'm all for us sitting down and working out long-term meaningful travel plan initiatives for our staff. What you're talking about is simply subsidizing them. They're already some of the, we pay them well. We're implementing multiple strategies to make sure that we're the preferred employer. And now we're asking the ratepayer, as well as the taxpayer, to help our council staff jump on a bus and pay less than everybody else. And we're going to borrow to do it. Why don't we do this, councillors, but then cut somewhere else? Trouble is, I don't hear any of you suggesting where we cut, because we can't. It's just easier. Let's just borrow.
Point of order, Madam Chair.
Councillor McPherson, what is your point of order?
In my speech, I made a suggestion where other funding for this could come from within an existing budget. And Councillor Wilson has claimed that he hasn't heard any other aspect. Maybe he wasn't listening, I don't know.
I'm not quite sure, Councillor McPherson, it's a point of order, but more material. The motion is the motion. You're asking for money.
Okay, point taken, Ewan. Carry on with your debate, please. Please finish your point, because you're nearly at the end of time.
Apologies, it is time.
Yeah.
Councillors, we keep writing checks we can't cash. We keep coming up with wonderful ideas and we want to do it all, but none of us are being mature enough to cut our own cloth. The ratepayers expect and deserve more.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Just on this one, I think it's a good idea, again, at the wrong time. We can't, I think the ratepayers are struggling out there, and we can't be seen to be subsidising staff at a time when everyone else is struggling to fund their own transport and other things. But I have to say that I was happy earlier on when we did proactively things like subsidise or provide, not really subsidise, but broker a really good deal with a shop in town for e-bikes, which staff took up on. That was an excellent initiative. And I think in time we'll be able to do more initiatives of that nature. It's just not, this is not the time. All right, we'll go to the vote.
No.
Oh, sorry, right to reply. Yeah, please do sing out.
I think Angela's got her hand up anyway.
Is she? You were sitting on top of your yellow, Angela.
Yeah, I know. Sorry about that. Look, thanks everyone. I've been listening to the debate here too, and listening to members get quite impassioned about it. I clearly heard Councillor McPherson say that there is an opportunity that we could find the funding for this, and so I'm comfortable with that. I also recall us last week talking very passionately about how we must look after staff, and we supported the health insurance, which is a lot more material than this particular decision. I'm weighing that up against the rates rise. We don't know what that's going to be. We'll have to deal with that when all of these proposals come through, and we may have to cut some projects. But I also weigh that up. Councillor McPherson has worked on this or waited for this for probably a decade. And we have signed off on a mode shift plan. We've signed off on biking and micromobility. This is more than just subsidising, which sounds like if we do subsidise less than 30% of staff, it's going to end up being 25% of a bus fare. So we're probably, I don't know, we're probably talking about 30 or 40 cents in the grand scheme of things. But it's more than that. It is about as I understand, the extension of e-bikes and other mode shift things that will be available to staff, and that we should be encouraging staff to move around on. So for those reasons, and also for Councillor McPherson being a champion in this area and being so patiently waiting for it. I think it needs to go into as the draft proposal. And of course, when we get to it, I'm going to be very supportive of us consulting on these proposals. So we will get really good feedback from our community. So I'm happy to support Councillor McPherson on this one. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McPherson, right of reply.
Yeah, thank you, Angela, for acknowledging my patience. It's a well-known virtue of mine. Look, I am very happy to go into a discussion with businesses anywhere in Hamilton to discuss why they should be asked to fund for 85 cents a year a trial in this area, because that's only the amount that it would cost on average. I'm very happy to put that up against the people who drive utes into council and the pressure that puts on our system. Jeff.
Point of order, Your Worship.
This is an
Point
area
of order, Your Worship.
Councillor
Councillor
McPherson, wait. Hang on, both of you wait, please. You can't ask me on a point of order if you don't let me speak. So what's your point of order?
My point of order, he's using bullying tactics to apply pressure to those who drive utes. It's a direct attack on elected members. It's a deliberate ploy that Councillor McPherson rolls
Okay,
out.
thank you. I've heard you.
Not
Thank
to
you.
Stop letting him do that sort of behaviour, Your Worship.
Thank you. Councillor McPherson, if you could stick to the issues and not any personal politics in your right of reply, I would appreciate it.
I point out, Madam Chair, that when I was personally mentioned by other speakers, A, I didn't interrupt, and B, nor did you pull them up.
No, but the point of order has been called, and I've just made that request of you to stick to the issues and not the people, which I would if a point of order was raised in any other circumstance. Anyway, do carry on with your debate. You've been interrupted. We'll give you plenty of time to finish.
Thanks very much, Mayor Paula. I was just going to make the point and use Jeff's name, but not in a derogatory way. He and I would agree that having plans with no action coming out of them are a waste of space. He may not use the same coffee table analogy I do, but we're quite similar in respect of wanting action or the plan not being worth it. Now, we have a climate change response plan. And one of the things that is most addressed in that is transport within Hamilton City. It is the biggest causer of carbon emissions in this city and the region, I might add. We have to address the biggest cause, surely. Now, I'd say to you, Jeff, do you want to be able to just claim to the electors that you support the climate change plan, or do you want to be able to say that you support actions arising out of it to actually address the issues that are raised? So I'm saying that quite seriously. I'm not trying to have a go at people. This is one of the areas where we can provide A, leadership, and B, a meaningful response by shifting 250 to 300 workers a year onto alternate means of transport, whether they're buses or bicycles. And that is quite an important leadership role that we could play in the city. Now, if this motion doesn't pass, it doesn't mean to say that I'm going to stop the pressure on staff. And for people like Councillor Wilson to say that I haven't put up, or no one's put up any alternative funding mechanisms is completely untrue. I have put, right from the start of my first speech, the acid back on management to find some of this resource to support mode change amongst staff from within other resources, such as the staff vacancy budget that's been talked about a couple of times by other members. So, you know, this is not the only thing that needs to happen in this area, but it is one contribution we ought to make as leaders, and I'm more than happy to have that discussion with the public. If you vote against this now, you don't get that discussion because it's not on the page.
Okay, thank you. We'll go to the vote, please. Mark Bunting's on the call, Amy, but he hasn't heard any of the debate, so he's not participating in this particular vote.
Therefore, we have a hung vote.
I'll cast my vote in favour of it going forward, but knowing that I don't support it, but it'll be a matter for further consideration in May. I think that's the fairest democratic way to go forward.
Therefore, the motion is carried, noting that in support was Councillor McPherson, Councillor O'Leary, Councillor Gallagher, Councillor Van Oosten, Councillor Thompson.
Thank you.
And whose were those against? They should be read too.
Well,
I'm not sure why sometimes
we did record that we. No, we did record
for.
the against. Amy does record the against for the original motion. The casting vote will be explained in its own terms, which is, and I'm being quite clear here, I voted against it, but I believe in a democratic process, so I am going to allow the discussion to go forward to for the purposes of the draft for discussion.
But Mayor Paula, that means it stays in the budget.
It does mean it stays in the budget.
Right.
But it's a draft plan, right? So it may not stay right till the end. Okay, so right, which one are we on to now? We are progressing. We're traveling very slowly, pun intended. Transport stakeholder manager, page 218.
Your Worship, just sorry, procedural point. We're not travelling slowly, are we? We've got half a day tomorrow as well.
Yes, most councillors.
We shouldn't be rushing this.
I'm not rushing it. You could hardly say that about how this morning has gone, Councillor Wilson. But I'm just saying that we are moving quite slowly through each item, and that's the way it is. Let's move on to Transport Stakeholder Manager on page 215.
So good afternoon, Mayor Paula and elected members. So this proposal is a request through the Infrastructure Operations Committee on the 9th of November and is a request for a resource to support the transport projects that we are delivering across our city, to have someone actively involved in bringing the community on the journey with us, which has been a lessons learnt and a constant reminder to staff to do that on all of the projects that we have delivered. And so this is about elected members have been requesting through the transport team whether we do have the number of resources to deliver on our transport projects. This is one role that has been highlighted as an area and a gap in terms of successful delivery into our community. So this proposal is about bringing the community on the journey as our city grows through our transport projects, and the community engagement aspect is a challenging environment. It is proving to actually bring the community on the journey is really important to our council to make sure that our community is listened to, it's heard, and their options are considered at the beginning of any project, rather than our teams going to our community with a project that solutions and options have already been thought through. And so we're actually asking their feedback on a problem that they weren't aware of. So this is hopefully that's explained the key stakeholder manager role to you. So any questions?
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions on this? There are no. Oh, there are. Okay, Councillor Donovan.
Thank you, Mayor Paula. This may be reasonably facetious, but would a transport stakeholder manager be responsible for delivering messages about staff getting subsidised bus rides?
That is not a genuine question, is it, or is it?
This is to work through the capital projects that are delivered out into our community. So, for example, our low cost, low risk program that's approved in the 10-year plan. It's not considered to be that type of key stakeholder manager to sit there and talk about staffing matters.
Okay, thanks.
Can you confirm that they won't discuss the private medical health insurance that all councillors wanted, given our public health service?
Martin, off track.
Oh,
now,
well, I'm
Board,
sorry. Well, with respect, I think Councillor Donovan was equally somewhat...
Yeah, well, I pointed that out, but you're also going out of order. So put your hand up.
I withdraw and apologise to Councillor Donovan.
Councillor Bunting.
Oh, that was odd. Okay. Yes. The question is we get the impression that it's about spreading out the message and telling people and selling some of the initiatives we're doing. But will this person also be involved with bringing back feedback from the community to us so we can make better decisions?
Correct.
Right. So it's not just a salesperson. It's someone who's actually there to haul in what people are thinking. Like, so for example, and I'm certainly not trying to lead this, but had we had this person during Innovating Streets, would that have been helpful?
Absolutely, yes. So this is about hearing, listening and considering and bringing that feedback back to elected members for consideration for the projects.
Right. So certainly, I'm certainly not saying would they have sold Innovating Streets harder, but they could have brought back information that would have actually made it a bit. Okay, thank you. That's pretty much answered my question. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pascoe.
Thank you. Given the, Evelisa, given the lessons and the feedback that we've had on Innovating Streets, do you think going forward we would manage these, street redevelopments differently and better? And in doing so, might not necessarily need this resource, this full-time resource going forward?
So in terms of the team that we have at the moment, we're anticipating about 70% of time will be actively engaging with our community. So the building's the easy aspect. So we wouldn't be able to do that with existing resources that we currently have, and hence the proposal here today.
Is that because we've got a fairly large work program ahead of us in terms of redesigning streets around the city than perhaps we would have had 12 months ago when we put the LTP together?
I guess it is, we're pulling together the program that we have, and based on the approved projects that we have delivered, the lessons learnt that have come from those projects have said that improvement needs to be made in the way that we communicate with our community. So this is one way of doing that and taking on board that feedback and lesson.
So we could not do that with existing resources if we do it more efficiently going forward?
We would struggle and we would end up in the same place as we were in our previous projects in terms of delivery and focus, yes.
If this wasn't approved today, how would we manage it going forward? And I know that we've used contractors and on different street redesigns that I've had some involvement with. Is that the answer to that, or is it?
Yes, we'd need to get an external support to help our teams deliver the projects and complete that engagement process.
So could we save that cost then by employing this person? I mean, isn't there a rebalancing? I know we've used contractors, and I know we did at Crosby Road and we did with Ward Street and so forth. Would we not be saving that cost rather than adding it on as a brand new cost?
So at the moment with this proposal, there are opportunities with our capital projects to look at whether there are opportunities to fund this role for those projects, and that's something that we can bring back should this be approved through to the proposals in May, just to understand what cost allocations can be reassigned. But at the moment we're saying, hey, like worst case scenario, this is what we need to deliver on the programs.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Just to note, Mark Bunting would like to move this one. Any further questions?
Sorry, Paula, I've indicated
Oh, okay.
earlier.
Oh, yield,
Oh,
Angela. I'm
sorry.
checking it.
Yeah.
That's
I
all
don't
right.
know. I don't know where you indicated it because I didn't see it.
In the chat. Everyone.
Happy for,
So I
happy for
think,
Mark to second.
yeah, happy to do that. If
Oh,
councillors,
look,
just to let you know, when you're chairing with multiple faces on, it's really hard to keep thread of the chat. So maybe directly to me as well, or directly to Amy, just because I try my best to follow
Yeah,
the
look,
chat.
I'm happy to
but,
yield to Angela and Sarah on this because it's
That's
their
okay.
committee. So,
So
no dramas.
Angela is moving and you're seconding.
Sweet.
Excellent. We've had all the questions, so we will go to the debate then. Angela.
Great, thanks. Look, we asked Deputy Chair, Councillor Thompson and myself asked the General Manager to look over her budgets really hard and see if there was anything movable to be able to fill this critical position. And this proposal is a result of that. And look, the reality is we have two exceptional staff members, Martin Parks and Robin Denton, who are experts in their field and deliver the multitude of projects in this area, but they are being taken away from project delivery because they are also having to deal with communicating and engaging with hundreds of emails, phone calls and messages. So that is taken away from their critical expertise. They are wonderful members of staff, but they need to be focused on their work. And look, this is more than just people going out and talking. Communication, and we have a great communication department that focuses on what to say and who to say it to, but engagement is about listening to and getting feedback from the people that are going to be affected. Engagement is essentially boots on the ground, and that's why this position is absolutely critical. Colleagues, this was unanimously supported at the IOC committee when I raised the proposal in my chair's report, so I'm hoping that's going to be the same today. And yeah, I guess a reminder that the tough critique from elected members through Innovating Streets and also through Crosby Road when we started that and other projects, because we don't have an expert in transport engagement person, came hard and fast from you. So this is more, yeah, this is delivering and trying to fix a gap that we have. Transport projects across the city are not business as usual. So they you know, with a growing city, we have growing pains and we have ever increasing transport projects. So it needs specialist experience when engaging with community on those projects, so that you are the ones that don't get the pressure from the public when things go wrong, and that we're not making the same mistakes, hopefully, and we have learnt from the experience of Innovating Streets. We've got Eastern Pathways coming up, biking and micromobility. This is a critical position, so I'm hoping for some support. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Oh, sorry. No, hang on a minute. Mark has a second, if you don't mind.
Oh, okay. Yep.
Thank you.
Cool. No dramas. Hey, look, yeah, well, Councillor O'Leary, you've obviously got my support on this one. You know, to those people who are worried, you know, who may be worried that this is just another person going out selling some sort of mode shift ideology, I think it actually works in your favour, in that these people are engaging, as Councillor Angela said, they're engaging, they're not just communicating or putting up fancy posters. By way of example, Crosby Road, we went out to Crosby Road and everyone did their level best with what we had. We ended up contracting out our communications and engagement. And by the time we went to Crosby Road, we had already given them a plan for a problem that they didn't even know existed. And that's where we went wrong. And that's where this person would have been able to very quickly have solved that straight away, gone out, listened to the community and said, hey, listen, they don't even know there's a problem out there that we're trying to solve yet. And it could have saved us a lot of pain. We have made mistakes with Innovating Streets, and largely that is because we didn't have the grunt to challenge ourselves, to have adequate conversations with both stakeholders and the council. So that's where we are desperately needing someone here. As Councillor O'Leary pointed out, we've got a massive mode shift program coming, and we don't want to get all positional because we don't have anyone out there who's going to have the time or the energy to listen to the community, because we don't have the monopoly on ideas. So I am, very, very keen on this position coming up. Because quite simply, we need, not only do we need the mouth, but we need the ears in this one. I think I'll stop talking, otherwise I'll talk people out of the idea. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson.
Thanks, Mayor Paula. I think it was last year, I attended, along with Councillor Rob and Councillor Maxine, a very fraught community meeting over at the in Claudelands, where residents were really concerned that we'd made decisions about what's happening to their streets without talking to them first, and without really giving them, genuine input. And so we've had conversations now with those residents, and we've assured them that elected members want to listen to community concerns, make sure that we take them on board and bring our community on board so that we get good outcomes for everybody. And to be able to genuinely engage with residents, take on board their feedback and concerns, and then deliver something that works for them, that is going to take some time and energy from someone with the right skills. And we've got a big program ahead of us. If we want to ensure that we can do it right, then we really do need to engage at the right level with our residents. So I really do support Councillor Angela and Councillor Bunting on this. Thanks.
Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, I won't be supporting this. Because you're asking for new money. And frankly, council needs to learn to live within its means. The reality is we have 70 vacancies, and we have a payroll of over $13 million. And our only solution is we keep adding more. So I'm not saying that the role is not needed, albeit that the role would be needed less if we came up with more sensible plans. I think we clearly accept respectively Ward Street was an absolute disaster. But the reality is we as an organisation need to refocus and reprioritise the current workforce, because we just can't keep adding to our payroll. We just can't keep adding to the number of staff that work in council, because in the same way as Councillor Sarah says that the community wants to be engaged, wants to be listened to, wants to have open lines of communication, I couldn't agree more. Sarah, they keep saying they can't afford to pay their rates. They keep saying we're in a global crisis, that inflation is tearing at the hearts of their existence. So we've got to listen to them, Sarah. We've got to start to listen and stop spending money and borrowing and reprioritizing.
Councillor Wilson, just a quick point. You did call out other councillors for naming others. I'd prefer that you stick to the issue and not personalise this to Sarah, please, in the same way that you've asked for that consideration. Please continue.
I know I'd finished. Thank you.
Have you? Thank you. Councillor Pascoe.
Yeah, thank you. And look, I see similarly to Councillor Ewan that there's a macro effect on our budget. It's a brand new expenditure, 120,000, 1.2 million over 10 years. We already have the experts, both roading, transport and communication, working within our organisation. And I'm just not convinced that we can't draw not an individual, but people from within those groups to provide the support when it's needed. Councillor Wilson has many times this morning talked about borrowing the fact that we're a $14 million shortfall in our balancing of the books, and the effect of every decision that we're making today is further borrowing. But look at it from another point of view. The alternative to borrowing, which really has a nil effect in terms of this year's sign-off of the annual plan, the alternative is to increase rates to cover the spending decisions over and above the agreed LTP that we signed off 9 months ago. And that will send an immediate message, not only to the ratepayers, but also to elected members, of the costs of the decisions, not only in this one, but all of the other decisions that we've been making and are making today, and maybe tomorrow. So I'd refer you back to the section, paragraph 45 in the staff report open, which states that every $2.2 million of spending requires a 1% increase in rates. And I'll leave it to you to work out the arithmetic on the $12 million of increased spending that we currently have in the graphs that we started this morning off with.
Thank you. Councillor McPherson.
Yep. Thanks, Paula. Look, this is a position which I wish wasn't necessary, but given the sort of issues that this council faced, the agonising it went over, the agonising the community went over when we had the Ward Street changes, traffic changes being debated and picked over, I think it's clear that we need to get ahead of the game there. And I do recall the committee discussion over this when Chair Angela mentioned it, and not alone, but amongst others, the Deputy Mayor being quite enthusiastic about the need for this, so that we didn't go and cause ourselves sort of self-inflicted injuries like had happened over Ward Street. And I'm paraphrasing his words. I'm not actually saying there's exact words there, but I think we all agreed at the time that we actually needed to get alongside the community, not just what Angela said, but to be proactive in that area, to be part of the, have this person and the rest of council for that matter being part of the community, so that we are aware of their needs and issues before we make the plans, and then we take them out for a further iteration and we work them through, and they work through with some people or a person in particular that the community trusts because they've been alongside them for a while and been part of the journey. If we parachute in from the outside like we do with most of our plans, then we run big risks of more Ward Streets, regardless of whether people like the outcome there or not. The way it was handled clearly didn't work very well for council or the community. This is a plan to redress that problem or to address that problem, and it's just as valid as the day it was mentioned in the Chair's report.
Deputy Mayor Taylor.
Thanks, Mayor Paula. Look, I had the same problem as I had with another one in terms of the vacancy, creating another staff member. Find it from the other vacancies, finding it within the existing budgets, if it's that important. And I've got to say, I haven't got a lot of sympathy if we're getting flack from residents for some of our transport plans. You know why? Because the residents are usually right. And the issue was raised, this person would have helped with innovating streets. Well, the answer is simple: stop doing innovating streets in the first place. I think it's disingenuous to suggest that this person is somehow going to influence our decision making, and so these decisions won't be made. They're going to be made because the majority of councillors are making these decisions. The reason we're having to communicate and indulge in damage control all the time is because as a council we seem to be bent on pushing through unpopular transport plans in the name of mode shift. We persist in putting cycle lanes so they conflict with other road users when we could be putting them off road. We persist in some ill thought out bus infrastructure. If we used a bit more common sense and a little less ideology in transport planning, then I don't think this position would even be necessary. So to me, it's just, we're almost deliberately antagonising residents. And if you're going to do that, you could have a whole team of these guys, and they're still not going to help you out of a hole. So I'm going to oppose this. And again, I don't think we're showing enough urgency in our budgeting. If it's that important, find it somewhere else.
Councillor Wilson.
Your Worship, I misspoke in my speech in terms of the quantum I gave regarding personnel costs. Of course, I misspoke. I was talking about a sub-budget. Actually, our personnel cost is just over 100 million a year. So I
So are you sorry? Have you debated already?
Yeah, and so I'm
just correct. Okay.
I'm making a correction.
Spoken.
Yeah, I know.
Okay,
and
so
I'm Councillor Dave.
He's just made.
I'm making
Councillor
a
Dave,
correction.
he's just made a quick correction. We've accepted the correction. We're done now. So
Yep.
Thanks, Ewan, for correcting that.
You're welcome.
Okay. Anybody else want to debate on this one? If not, we're going to go to the vote.
Or the right of reply?
Oh yeah, I could do that one as well.
Must
Okay,
be
right of
lunchtime.
reply.
Look, a gentle reminder here that we recently approved $180,000 of new funding for rent subsidies and another $60,000 with no debate for food safety certificate subsidies. That was new funding as well. So there's a gentle reminder there. Look, the reality is whether this goes ahead or not, the job will still be done, but it will be done more expensively. It sounds to me that everyone is in agreement that it needs to be done and it needs to have an expert do it. Voting against this doesn't mean it won't happen, but voting against this will mean it will cost the city a lot more. The reality is, because the work has to be done, unless we cancel a whole lot of transport projects, we'll just have to continue to use external contractors to do this work. Which is what we're doing now, and that is a lot more expensive than bringing a new staff member on board. And using those external consultants, we are taking a gamble with how well they know the area that we're asking them to work in, and how effective they're going to be in communicating and engaging the project and our outcomes for that project. So I just ask members to just think about that before you press the button, that this will cost more if this doesn't go ahead, because we will just continue to use external contractors to do this engagement work. Thank you. Thank you, Paula.
Thank you. Go to the vote, please, everyone.
The motion is carried, 9 for, 3 against. Those dissenting is Councillor Wilson, Councillor Pascoe and Deputy Mayor Taylor.
Thank you. And we are now going to adjourn to 2:40. I'm going to give a full, oh, hang on. Was that 2:10 full hour, right? Because
Could I ask, we would like to return in a public excluded session to discuss item C11 again, as was the email I circulated yesterday. Would we be able to move into public excluded now, just for ease of the public?
I've moved that we move into public excluded. Deputy Mayor Taylor seconds. All in favour? Opposed?
Mayor Paula,